Is that ready?
Yes.
Okay. Alhamdulillah, people are silent now, so it's like they are in either sleep mode or listening mode. I hope they are in listening mode.
Yes, listening.
Myself being here in the position of moderation, so I'll see what I can do. My name is Muhammad Sanaullah Khan, and people call me professionally Muhammad Khan, but colleagues and people who know me, my given name is Sanaullah, and that's what is being called. My Arab friend, they call me Sanaullah by pronunciations. Nevertheless, I'm an internist by profession, and I call myself human system analyst, and that's my job. What I do as much as I can, and naturally, I have my relationship with the AFMI and something else as well, but that is my personal endeavor to make things better for Muslims and other people whom I have any relationship of any nature. This program continues from this morning, and so many people have spoken about the issue of secularism and pluralism and all these things that being dissected out very well, and therefore I do not want to delay it in further, because there are very special guests are here. They are very well prepared to speak and tell us about their own thought process, which will be further enlighten us, our thinking process, and hopefully will help in achieving the best, not only for India, but world at large. In addition to that, I would also say that there are time for question and answer. So hold on your comments. Also, if you want to do some clappings and admirations, try to be short rather than prolonged, because that will interfere with the thought process of the people's too. The first and foremost in the line of the speakers is our senior Dr. Hussain Nagania. He's very well known to all of the people, most of the people I would say. He's a surgeon by profession and a humanist by action, and he will do some surgery on this secularism and pluralism and see what he does. By the way, he's a heart surgeon, and naturally he will come to the heart of the topic. So let us invite him and let him come. Thank you.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum. Greetings to all of you. Namaste. Welcome. It is indeed a pleasure to be on this honorable platform. I have been associated with AFMI for many years now, and served in the humble position of being a past president as well. And I was kind of taken aback when Dr. Tajuddin, the convener of the present convention, called me and said that I'd like you to speak about pluralism. So I was kind of taken amiss. I mean, I'm a heart surgeon, and I'm not a historiographer or a scientist for that matter, and so forth. But I said, well, let me do some research. I'm a novice to the subject, so pardon my ignorance if I expose any, but I'll try to do the justice as much as I can. So let's have the first slide, please. So I was looking for what is the meaning of pluralism. And I'm glad that there were two topics that were being discussed, which is pluralism and secularism. And I stuck myself to pluralism because Dr. Muhammad gave a very good elaboration on secularism as well. So that has been taken care of, and I'll concentrate myself on this part of the topic. Now, what is pluralism? Now, pluralism, if you define it as in a dictionary, the Webster Dictionary says, is a state of society in which members of diverse ethnic, racial, religious, or social groups maintain and develop their traditional culture or special interest within the confines of a common civilization. So what is the important thing that you take back from this? The take back is that there is common benefit to the community, the society, the humanity, and that is the aim. The aim of pluralism is to get it for the benefit of the entire state. Next, please. So, in order to study this, I went back to historical books and looked at many things, and lo and behold, I found that a book written in the 14th century, back in the 14th century, was very pertinent to this particular subject. And many philosophers, historians, especially the Greek philosophers, then the Muslim philosophers, and thereafter many other philosophers and historians have examined the subject. But this stands out as a kind of an example. And this is the Ibn Khaldun, who was a historian and historiographer that wrote this book called the Muqaddimah. And the Muqaddimah, which was written in the 14th century by Ibn Khaldun, it tells you the details about civilizations and how the civilizations come together, how they develop, how they get together, how they advance, and what is the reason that they fall behind. And that is the thing that we have to learn, because if we are going into a new experiment, especially in the Indian subcontinent, about developing a nation, then we should look at the history and see what lessons we can learn from history. So Ibn Khaldun was a great historian, a philosopher, a sociologist. His magnum opus, Muqaddimah, was an introduction to his book on history of human civilization, which he wrote in the 14th century. It examined the rise and fall of human societies and civilizations. His concepts have been examined by subsequent authors and so forth, and he still outstands as one of the most outstanding books on the history of civilizations. So the book is exhaustive and has great observations which still are true in the present day society. But in summary, the early humans were nomadic, as you know. We were hunters, gatherers, and but as the human civilization developed, the humanity evolved the concept that getting together and staying in communes was much better for the benefit of each other. And therefore, there evolved lands, domains, urban units, cities, towns, villages, and so forth. And then agriculture was the thing that developed as well, which coalesced the communes together, and this caused congeniality, cooperation, interdependence among the human societies, and it led to urbanization, domains, kingdoms, and a lot of research and investigation developed. That's how scientific thought developed, and that's why the world advanced to the stages that we have, which we see today. So some of the key observations noted in the books are as follows: that societies develop and advance rapidly when there is peace, stability, abundance, food, and nourishment. These are the bare necessities for societies to develop into a good civilization. If there is war, there is impairment, instability, impoverishment, and the section of the society goes down. So as soon as there is war, what we say, jhagara, fasad, as soon as jhagara, fasad sets in a community, that community is going to go down. It's not going to progress. And that is we learn from the lessons of history. The advancement and regressions of human civilizations are cyclical. They go up and they go down. And it depends on the humanity at that time that dictates as to whether we are going to go up or we are going to go down. Greed, corruption, jealousy, and gangsterism, which, as you know, is very rampant in the world today, has led to rapid decline and even annihilations of societies and communities. So this is the hallmark of what these civilizations will go down. So lessons should be easily learned from the study of these periods of history of human civilizations. So this history that Muqaddimah sort of really sums up tells us something. It teaches us something. So let's look at some of the top civilizations and what they contributed. If you look through the civilizations, the Mesopotamians were the first to invent language and alphabet. That's how we learned writing. The Egyptians were the people who really brought agriculture, especially cotton and other grains, which are still in existence, which we still find in the pyramids and so forth. The Romans were the masters of roads and transport. The Indians invented the zero and the decimal system, which otherwise there would be no mathematics today. The Chinese were the inventors of the silk and paper. The Islamic civilization contributed for mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and so forth. And in the modern civilization, the Japanese are the masters of electronics. The Europeans developed computing, the sea routes, travel, and so forth. And the Americans were the ones that really put the space explorations into the orbit. So all these civilizations have something to contribute in order that humanity can advance. So what are the now there were some experimental or some communes which developed in a pluralistic society. That means they were intercultural. They were independent of religious thought, which brought, although the ruling society may be pertaining to one religion, the Islamic Spain was an ideal kind of community which set an example of how a multicultural society should work. There were Jews, there were non-Muslims, there were Christians that were practicing in the same community. They were given equal status. There was no consideration whatsoever of what religion you came from. They were actually ministers in the state and so forth. Jerusalem was another example of multicultural society that really progressed very fast. Under the Islamic rule, Jerusalem progressed to a very high degree. The Indian subcontinent, in fact, is a very good example of multicultural society which kept on progressing and emancipating in the civilization. And then now we can, in modern society, we can talk about United States. It considers itself a melting pot. It invites a lot of cultures, it invites religions, it invites scholars, and thereby the society progresses. And the space exploration and all the progress that we have taken place is because of the fact that multi-cultures participated in the progress of this nation. As you know, the original nation was just Indians here, there were nobody else. And everybody is an immigrant in this country. Now, Europe is now suddenly waking up and is trying to examine that, we should unite. In fact, as you know, Europe is divided into many languages, many cultures, many societies were completely at war with each other for a long period of time. And now that they have decided to come together, they are now even thinking about making European Union and so forth. In India, pluralism has been there for a long time. Since Vedic times, India was multicultural. Multitudinous various of cultures, religions, and peoples have come to India. And if you would like to read more about this, I would cite you the very good research that has been done by Professor Momin, who was a professor in the University of Bombay about sociology. And he has published a lot of papers, and he tells you about why India should be really considered a melting pot. Initially, the people may have come as conquerors, but they decided to make India their permanent home. They settled in the subcontinent, adopting some of the indigenous customs and learning some of their own, including their language, customs, culture. So India became, like an Urdu language. It was born in India. It never existed before. And yet it's such a beautiful language. It's become so nice that, poetry is one of the languages that is of expression is the Urdu language, which it has reached its pinnacle. So India is true melting pot. If you examine all the cultures, the religions, and the humanity that exists there. The melting pot has made India rich culturally, socially, economically and politically. Despite the division of Indian subcontinent, India and Pakistan, the cultural unison of the people of Indian subcontinent is absolutely unique, and it's universal. So, United States is a big experiment in multicultural society of pluralism. It is a melting pot of cultures. The claim of the success of the American experiment is still premature though, because dogma and racial prejudice still exist, and they come up to, they rise their ugly heads, and as a result, you know that America has gone up and may go down. And you know, the civilization which claims itself to be the most superior power in the world may start declining. Already, I mean, the seeds are being sown for racial disparity and cultural disparity and all this kind of things. And they're not thinking that this is bad for the nation. So it is important for the majority to give the minority their due rights and recognition, and for any of the nation to progress. So after 2 world wars, Europe is again deciding to become united. They killed each other almost. 1 million people were killed in World War II. And now they suddenly are becoming united. They want to join with each other. The European Union has already been. Why? Because they know that multicultural and pluralism is at the base of human development and endeavor, and that is what raises the human civilization. So countries of Europe would like to make European Union a trading and economic partner and a unified giant. In unity there is strength, and in multicultural and pluralism there is strength. China and Japan, for example. China is well contained, sufficient, it benefits from its discipline and socialization. Its remarkable progress and modernization has led to become one of the most advanced nations in the world. It will very soon, I predict to you that it will probably very soon pass the United States in the next 20 or 50 years maybe. But silently China is spreading its influence worldwide. And why? Is because there has been no wars fought in China. There has been peace, there has been discipline, there has been, look after each other and so forth. Japan, after the World War II, diverted all its attention in scientific development and has become a leading electronic nation. Russia, on the contrary, did not treat its citizens right. It dismembered into smaller nations, and it is completely, the USSR is no longer in existence. That's because they did not give this pluralism the importance that it really deserves. Putin is trying to regain power, but Russia is still considered a rogue nation because of its ambition of expansionism and dominance. So in conclusion, India is a great experiment in pluralistic democracy that is still struggling to establish its place in the world order. Having been colonized and cannibalized by the Western powers, is still recovering from the after effects of an enslaved nation. However, how India uses its pluralism to its advantage is still to be seen in the future, and we will only know if this is successful when they exercise the correct ways of putting pluralism into effect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nagamiya, for your insightful thought process of this pluralism. And you, in the meantime, also mentioned the rise and fall of the nations. Allah की कुछ सुन्नतें होती हैं, जो कुछ देखते हैं. I heard Dick Cheney one time after his, his coming out of his government machinery. He was asked about the good of USA and what sort of the bad of USA and things like that. I don't know the exact question, but he was talking that there are a lot of things are bad, no doubt about it in USA, but overwhelming situation is that it is good to others, and that makes survival. So I think it is very important to understand that the nations do preserve when they are good, and they do good for others, and they fall if they become destructive for others. So let us hope that we be the part of it in this. And thought process regarding secularism and plurality is being done in the same situations. Next speaker, Mr. Rajiv Ravi Krishnan. He's a journalist by profession. He has insight into South Asia political aspect of it, and he has been writing about those things. He also has mentioned about something about Rohingya. He mentioned to me last night about that, and he wrote quite a few things about the current administrator of the Myanmar as well, initially about her ineffectiveness of controlling the situations. It was getting worse and worse anyway. So I asked him for his thought process on these things and whatever he wants to say to the audience, and welcome you to this podium.
And also, I think a very important thing to say, Jai Bhim for Bhimrao Ambedkar, who I think when we're thinking about the vision of India that we want to see, it's actually the constitutional, democratic, secular vision that Dr. Ambedkar laid out that we should seek to reclaim and be part of the legacy of those who carried forward sort of his movement and his ideas. So I say that with all respect and for also a way, a vision forward for us. And as far as introduction, thank you for the introduction. I've worked as an editor for a magazine. It's Himal South Asian magazine. It was a quarterly magazine based in Nepal, and it was the only magazine that covered all of South Asia. It went outside of the nationalist framework. It looked at what are the continuities in the region, what are the ways that populations within the region, as the region has shaped, have actually interacted with one another, cooperated with one another, and how that sort of deeper history of South Asia goes against some of the political trends that we're seeing right now with this very hardline nationalism. And so I've done editorial work. I've worked for also Jacobin magazine. So mostly I've done editing work. I've done some writing also on what's going on in India. So the overview of the talk that I'll sort of try to cover as much as I can given the time constraints, talk a little bit about the electoral rise of the Hindu nationalist, Hindu supremacist movement, and what are the consequences, what does it look like? I'll also talk about the sort of ideology and structure of the movement, and then also I think it's very important to, as we sort of think about ways forward, how do we understand the analytical aspect of this? Like, how do we analyze how this movement came in? Is such a crucial aspect too. How do we actually combat it? How do we come up with the politics to oppose it? So understanding the confluence of factors is very important. And the last part I'll focus on is what can we do being situated in the US? What kind of efforts can we take to actually counter this movement and build an alternative movement? So briefly, we know the BJP swept the 2014 general elections. Despite winning only 31% of the overall vote, it translated into 50% of all available seats. So they're in a dominant position, and that position has been further supported in subsequent state elections, most notably UP, where they won 312 seats, and the next party was 54. So you can see the kind of dominance that they've achieved electorally. They're winning even at the very local level, and I think even with Gujarat, the assembly elections coming up, we're expecting, despite a lot of problems in Gujarat, some of the things that I've seen in terms of poll numbers, which I know are contested, show that BJP looks to be in a good position to win an overwhelming majority there too. And one of the things about this electoral rise is it's not just about winning seats, but it's how winning elections emboldens these right-wing activists on the ground. The members of VHP America, VHP, Vishwa Hindu Parishad of India, of RSS, Bajrang Dal, they themselves contribute actually in some of the electoral campaigning, but the election win gives them a kind of sense of confidence about carrying out some of the things that I'll mention in a minute in terms of the violence that they engage in. As people must be familiar, Yogi Adityanath has come to power as Chief Minister of UP, and you can get a sense, this is someone who has set up a militant organization that has carried out extreme violence, and I think that's what's happened over the last 20 years is you've had a regularizing or normalizing of these type of people who have themselves called for, sort of created frenzies around these spectacles of violence, themselves coming into positions of very high power. with no sense, there's no accountability in the first instance when they were involved in getting people, riled up to commit violence, and now they're in these positions to exert even more influence. So, we've seen sort of campaigns around things like Love Jihad, concerns about, Muslim men as predators trying to sort of draw Hindu women into the fold, or Ghar Wapsi, which bringing Muslims back into the Hindu fold, as they say. Obviously we've had a lot around this cow vigilantism, and I think it's been mentioned earlier today about, India is a huge exporter of beef. A lot of it is buffalo meat, and it's also the 5th largest consumer. But there are these deep histories of especially Muslims and Dalits being involved in cow production and of like a cow industry. And I think this is sort of an attack on that. It's an attack on their livelihood. And you're seeing policies come in, making it a non-bailable offense, get potential life imprisonment for being involved in cow slaughter. And the most virulent form of this, how this is being articulated, is this Gau Rakshak, which these sort of vigilante cow protection groups that VHP has started to bring in, sort of going after people who they suspect of transporting beef or being involved in the cattle industry in some manner. But yeah, I think that it should be understood not only as an attack on Muslims and Dalits on the basis of their identity and on the basis of sort of marginalizing them further, but also a direct economic attack on their livelihoods. Just to give a sense of what what VHP is saying, they set up something called a Hindu helpline, where they actually have, you could call into them and say, oh, I suspect that somebody's involved in this cow slaughter. And that's a clear way to, other vigilantes, sort of other, interpersonal issues and things can get taken out in this manner through this Hindu helpline. A couple cases I want to highlight. Pelu Khan, who are the people being affected? I think we should also sort of name and say who they are. The same way I think in the US we've had Black Lives Matter, explicitly mentions and talks about the lives of the people who've been killed by the police. We should also name the people and talk about the people who have suffered at the hands of this violence. And Pelu Khan is an example where he's a licensed dairy farmer who had come to Rajasthan to buy cattle, and he was beaten by VHP, Bajrang Dal activists. And it was actually the victims of the attack were booked after the attack. And I think you have Rajasthan high-level politicians saying, both sides are to blame. And that's the kind of climate in India today. This one, obviously I've spent a lot of time in Chennai, so maybe people aren't as familiar maybe with the South Indian context, but there's a case of this student, R. Suraj, who was IIT Madras, and he had participated in a beef festival the day before. He goes into a vegetarian canteen the next day, and a group of activists, right-wing activists, comes up to him, and they basically start to, escalate the situation, and they beat him on the basis that he had participated in a beef festival the day before, and that he had come into a vegetarian canteen the next day. That's the level to which that they're going. And this is a government, secular government-run institution, and the rights of the student is not being protected. I think another example of what a Gau Rakshak looks like in practice. And so, Pew Research Center came out recently, and they have this sort of analysis of looking at sort of hostilities involving religion and what does peace look like globally. And India was ranked the 4th worst in the world out of 198 social hostilities related to religion. I think that it is important to talk a little bit about Hindutva ideology and understand. I think this quote for me sums up. We can obviously that is a talk on its own. But basically, what was the vision of the country that they see? They are explicitly opposed, despite using democratic mechanisms or manipulating democratic mechanisms, electoral mechanisms to gain power. They are very much situated against the secular democratic framework of the country, and their vision is one of wholly subordinating minorities and other communities under the vision of a Hindu nation. And so what does it look like? This is the militaristic training that we see of RSS in their Shaka. This is the kind of militaristic training that they engage in. But you also, next slide, you see that they have this vast social media network project where you have as many as 20,000 online activists tweeting 300 times a day. And this has played a huge role in, they have such an elaborate messaging sort of network and campaigning that they are able to reach so many people through mechanisms like WhatsApp, Twitter, Facebook. And, I've seen stories even about, related to this Rohingya issue, these fake news stories that they're promoting in terms of, especially trying to depict Muslims badly, and these, trying to create fear around more Muslim migrants coming into India. So we should sort of understand the different faces of what the movement looks like. So just to give a sense, I made this sort of organizational chart. The reason for making, I think everybody would be familiar with a lot of the organizations, but just to get a sense of how elaborate it is. It's like we think of the Sangh Parivar, what is that family of organizations? They have a political wing, they have a militant sort of activist wing, they have a student wing, they have a labor union. They're involved in every sphere. They have programs like Manvasi Kalyanashram, which are specifically targeted towards Adivasis. And so we should really see that they have service components, they have political components, and they have other ways in which they reshape society. This, I think, is very important for us, being situated in the US, is that, this is a network, it's not just a national network, it is a global fascistic network that they have created. And so they have, for every organization that they have created in India, they have a corollary, they have something that's sort of connected to it in the US and the UK, all over the African context in Australia. I think the story was that one of the first overseas RSS chapter was started on a boat of Indian migrants going to Kenya. So you can get a sense of how, how it looks, and you see, Vishwa Hindu Parishad in America, they have Hindu Student Council, which is a very prominent student organization on many campuses across the country. These projects like Ekal Vidyalaya, where you have people, those are projects in India that they have direct connection to the US context trying to raise funds. And the Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh, they, have these a lot of educational programs intervening in the sphere of education. And so again, more organizations, Overseas Friends of BJP, Hindu American Foundation, and these other foundations that are producing new texts and things like that. I think it just gives a sense, the whole idea of listing these organizations is to give a sense of what we're up against and what we actually have to do in the US context, which I'll talk at the very end. So as I mentioned, what does political advocacy look like in the US? They have had conversations over tea to build support for BJP and raise money for the election campaign in 2014. You have Hindu American Foundation, who presents itself and uses the space of multiculturalism in the US and promotes this vision. It's an explicitly political organization. They try to intervene, they lobby politicians, and they sort of look at their role as making sure to protect India's image. And when they say that, like anything criticizing human rights issues in India, they have consistently opposed and found political actors who they've lobbied in favor of that. And then, if you can go back just for 1 second. The last one, I think again, like the very important arena of contestation is, what are they doing in terms of U.S. politicians that they're connecting with, that they're lobbying. You have someone like Sonal Shah, who her family came from an RSS background. She herself had been part of Vishwa Hindu Parishad in earthquake relief efforts. And this came under some scrutiny in the Indian American community, but she was appointed by the Obama administration to be part of the transition team. And these are the issues that are it didn't get the kind of attention it deserved. It didn't get the scrutiny it deserved. Her responses were not scrutinized the way that they should have been. The way that we would scrutinize other people who have controversial pasts. Or presence, what are the questions that need to be asked about someone like her? And then I think I really have to say about Tulsi Gabbard, who is seen somehow in America as a US progressive, when she is very well connected to the Hindu right movement, is a very big supporter of Modi, and she is seen and being projected as a future presidential candidate. I think that's something that we have a very significant role in challenging and opposing not just among Indian Americans, but among US progressives to avoid that possibility at all. This is an example of what the kinds of things that they're talking about. This Bala Gokulam, they have these schools set up for kids. And so, it's not just like, learn about your culture, learn about Hindu identity, but it's such a militaristic vision about, like, listen, country and world, we are the victorious soldiers. This is the kinds of things, and they venerate the major RSS leaders, are actually people that they have their kids dress up as. And that they sort of present them as the heroes of the country. And I think that this is very shocking. You know, I think a lot of people don't, in the US, when I mention this to Americans, especially have no sense that this is happening, you know, so. I mentioned that some of the development work and things that they've done. So what that is like money being raised from the US. IDRF is a famous example during the tsunami relief, where IDRF, I mean, even groups like Association for India's Development accidentally got tied up with them and had to have discussions about how to de-link, but they were raising money and they're raising money for relief, and they're carrying out their Hindu supremacist vision even in the relief work that they discriminate in their aid work. And Ekal Vidyalaya, like I mentioned, they target, it's like education programs targeting and trying to social engineer among Adivasi communities that have been left out or left behind by the state. And like I've mentioned the money is like, to put a number on it, $55 million from 2001 to 2012 being given to some affiliated charitable groups in the US. It's an incredible amount of money, and a lot of that is going to India to do actual work on the ground. Again, I mentioned some of the groups and things involved on campuses, especially. There's a lot of contestation on campuses. They're promoting their vision on campuses through student groups, but also in terms of putting pressure on academics that they find are critical of their agenda. So I think Sheldon Pollock was an example of, there's a petition to remove them. They'll do these petitions to kind of go after people who they see as critical to Hindutva, critical to their vision of a Hindu Rashtra, and so that's sort of what we're seeing on the campus front. And I'll just go through these quickly. You can get a sense of, these are the kinds of events. And Mohan Bhagwat, the head of the RSS, is coming for a book launch in 2008 in New York, at a major venue, releasing a book on MS Goa. I mean, this is an incredible thing that could even happen. I mean, it's like, think about it in a different context. Like, somebody who's a head of a fascistic organization coming, like we've seen it in the US, they're getting shut down, they're having thousands of people come and protest them. This is the head of a militaristic organization which has been directly involved in violence, has fomented violence in the Indian context, going and launching a book about someone who espoused a supremacist vision of a country. That's an amazing thing, that if it happened in the US context in some other way, you would have a lot of people showing up for protests, you'd have a lot of people shutting it down. But here these things go on, and this is what it looks like. You have kids being dressed up like this and saluting the saffron flag, and the next one, these kind of, again, you have these major these kinds of RSS leaders being venerated. You have, this is interesting because you have American teachers, Guru Bandhana, they have this sort of celebration of teachers, so you're bringing in these teachers, they think, it's just a cultural program. It's a Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh program. And, we should, again, all these things, they may seem to a lot of people, it's just their cultural things, but I think a lot of things are passing under the realm of culture, through the guise of culture, when they're actually very pernicious and very detrimental. Baba Ramdev being invited to Southwest US, I thought this is just, with the snow and the saffron flag, I just found it. It's like, it's everywhere, and they do this militaristic training even here. Next one. And then, so that's to sort of get to this point, that one of the things is this movement, like we kind of look at it in a shorter time span. We look at it as if, where did it come from? We had a secular vision of this country and it's been distorted by them alone. I don't think that's the case. I think the case is that the problems of the nature of the society, especially as this Brahminical Hindu vision of society, has sort of produced everyday forms of violence. Especially in terms of caste, and I think we should have caste as a centrality of caste in India that we have to acknowledge. And these everyday forms of violence and exclusion have existed. They've existed in India independently, they existed in colonial India, they existed going back for generations upon generations. Civilizationally, we have seen this. And we've had discrimination in independent India of housing, employment, education. You have very explicit housing discrimination that I saw a study in Mumbai, like big cities even, using things like vegetarianism as a way to discriminate, saying that only vegetarians, only that sort of thing, or looking at the surname, caste surname, or religious surname, and basically not allowing people to live on that basis. And then I think the last point on that was, if you look at the prison population, this is an institutional problem. Prison population, Adivasis, Dalits, and Muslims make up 53% of the prison population in India. I think we should look at that these forms of violence have existed, and that Hindutva has come as one other articulation of that. And so, what have they done in sort of taking advantage of the situation on the ground? They've created this incredible network. It's the largest non-governmental organization in India, maybe one of the largest in the entire world. They have projects all over the country. I can give an example. When I was a student in Chennai, this is again, Tamil Nadu is seen as a place where Hindutva does not have much hold. You have this sort of influence of a very secular Dravidian politics around Tamil that was very anti-Brahmin also. And in a state, you have these Dravidian leaders talk about Hindutva will never take hold there. So I did a project actually on looking at RSS-run schools in Tamil Nadu. And just to get a sense of what is the network, they use slightly different names. They have a delinking from the national network, but they basically look at gaps in state provision and provide educational resources on that. And the teachers explicitly told me, we are against the secular education in the country. We will go after people like Nehru. We will not celebrate their holidays. And they talked about always referring to Vedic civilization in the actual sort of educational process. And I was asked this question about, what do you do about religious minority? There used to be some Muslim-run schools and Christian-run schools in that area. And they're like, we've incorporated them into our school, and we'll have a Muslim or a Christian play Krishna in the school play. So that's a completely, Hindu fundamentalist sort of vision of education, which is taking root all over the country, actually. You go back inside. They've used, especially communal polarization, it's not like they just engage in violence like that. They engage in violence as a way to reshape the electorate, and it pays electoral dividends. In Gujarat, I think out of the 65 constituencies affected by the Gujarat pogrom, 52 of them, I think they won those after this violence had occurred. So it serves an electoral purpose. It's explicit agenda that they've been able to sort of rile up violence as a way to win elections. I think that there's been, I used to come across this, maybe this is more anecdotal, but a tendency, especially among certain middle-class Indians, about that we need less democracy, we need more, like almost a dictatorship, because the country is too inefficient and we need somebody to just run it. Well, this is the outcome of something like that. I think the last part is we have to look at these deeper economic trends. How did the liberalization process open up opportunities for BJP? How did this sort of confluence of factors I was talking about, you have these broader economic trends that have actually, fed into a kind of resentment as some people get ahead, and it sort of creates a sort of sense of inequality in the society. Some people are getting ahead and there's a sense of resentment, and you have some of that resentment being channeled through Hindu right-wing organizations. I think this may be a little bit controversial for some folks. I'd love to have a discussion about it. The role of the Congress Party in enabling Hindutva. I think that Congress has been the sort of stalwart of secularism. I reject this almost entirely. I think in certain instances and certain people have. And I think Nehru probably, he did have a commitment to secularism. But I think if you go back to Gandhian vision, I think there's serious problems with the Gandhian vision for the country, because I think at no point, even if he was dealing with untouchability, he was always firmly committed to the idea of a caste Hindu society, and talked about how caste actually saved from Hinduism from disintegrating. And I think that trajectory from Gandhi onwards, as opposed to, he was killed by Godse, so we sort of see him as opposed to the Hindu right movement. But actually there's some continuity that you can draw, and that's why even right now, you're having Amit Shah, you're having Modi, they sing praises of Gandhi, because it's politically useful for them. But also that I don't think, even if they had some problems or they saw him as too moderate, I think there's been some continuity in the sort of way Gandhi's politics played out and what we see as a sort of soft Hindutva and what we see today. And then in terms of the party, you have a secular democratic framework. You can't just have it and let it just be on its own on a piece of paper. And I think that's you can have a progressive constitution, you can have progressive provisions, you can have laws on the books. But there's this thing about politics is not just about election. Politics is about day-to-day life and the kinds of ways in which you talk about things, the way that you make arguments to people about things. And I think that when it comes to actually organizing a democratic society, I think they failed miserably in this approach. I don't think many of the parties the so-called secular parties have not built a politics of secularism. they've let that space go in the absence of creating a genuine politics of secularism, showing legitimacy for secularism. They've kind of given up that space, and in that absence, in that sort of gap, you have Hindutva come up. And then, you know, I said soft Hindutva as an electoral strategy. You've had from, you know, yeah, you've had, especially I remember Rajiv Gandhi, you've had Rahul Gandhi even recently, like making appeals. Like who opened up Babri Masjid when VHP had made the claim that Babri Masjid before it was demolished, that site should be opened up. And Rajiv Gandhi was the one who actually he actually opened up the site. And I mean, I've seen some articles talking about how he wanted to play both sides of that. He wanted to appeal to different constituencies, Muslims at one point and Hindus at another point. Rahul Gandhi in the sort of campaigning around Gujarat recently has, you know, there's an article about how he's trying to take such efforts to play to this Hindutva, like in a soft way, to sort of play up this sort of religiosity, his own religiosity. You have many other examples like Digvijay Singh who talked about like, you know, the importance of cow protection and how he was a more devoted Hindu than Umabhati. And you know, you have these sort of examples historically of the Congress itself in states that they run where there's been extreme instances of violence, and I think the gentleman mentioned earlier about what Sikhs had to endure, but also what other groups have had to endure under Congress-run governments in particular states. So, I'll try to get through this, you know, wrap up a little bit quickly. Potential effects of the Hindutva policy approach is you know, you have, you know, we've already seen this. This is happening. Some of these things are happening under Congress. You have aggressive foreign policy. This militarization, especially internal militarization, was happening under the Congress anyway. I think you'll see more of that. India has become the world's largest arms importer. A lot of those arms are coming from the state of Israel, and I think that relationship could become much closer. It's already become very close. You have major democratic institutions that I think will be infiltrated, have already been infiltrated by basically fascistic elements who come in and will seek to distort them. You're going to have the suppression. It is, again, how do we understand fascism? Fascism really is the politics of the ruling class against working people at its most basic form. And what that's going to mean is suppressing labor and suppressing labor rights, suppressing people's struggles around environment, and creating favorable conditions for corporations to operate. And you'll have something called accumulation by disposition. We've had such land acquisition that's affected so many communities. I think we'll see that process continue of taking land from very marginalized communities at the behest of corporate interests. It's just a little bit of a sense of Hindutva and big business have been tied in. These are, you know, Adani, Ambani, he's very close with the Modi sort of administration, even before he came into power. You know, we talk about what is neoliberalism as this sort of idea of the state ceding responsibility, sort of this agenda to privatize societies, an agenda to deregulate, privatize, make the society more amenable for private interests and private profit making. And I think that, you know, Hindutva movement has positioned itself as being suitable for this project which has come into force in India. And that you know, despite neoliberalism claiming that it provides more freedom for people, it actually has gone in hand with authoritarian governments on different instances. More of the same. I think this is sort of Hindutva's project to suppress struggles that could be waged against some of the interests of capital accumulation in India. And yeah, I mean, again, like if the state is not providing something, then RSS can come in and provide that service if the state is not doing it. Just briefly touch on, I would highly recommend reading Meera Nanda's book about the God market, where she talks about how liberalization opened up the possibilities around, you know, this surge of religiosity among middle class people as they had more income, that they were spending more money on very new and interesting forms, interesting in a bad way, forms of religiosity, and that it actually spurred more God-men, God-women, and created this sort of nexus between state, temple, and corporate entities, working almost hand in hand in certain instances in terms of providing certain things that weren't there. And yeah, you can go to the next one. And yeah, I'll be wrapping. So you know, you have something called the World Hindu Economic Forum in Kenya. So this is like an explicit attempt to bring together these two visions. You know, this economic globalization, neoliberal project, and Hinduism. If you go to the next one. So yeah, this is what they're looking to do. Like, you know, they're not talking Indian society. They're talking Hindu society. The elites of Hindu society coming together, you know, to sort of basically, yeah, come up with favorable business relations and things like that. You can go to Okay, and I'm not the last slide, so good time. So this is the big component. I think we can talk about this in the discussion, so I won't dwell on it. This is the main project. This is what we're tasked to do. This is where we've fallen short, and I include myself in this very much so. How do we think about an alternative politics in the U.S.? How do we, I talked about this thing, I presented in mostly U.S. American progressive forums, and how do they relate to the sort of issues that we're discussing today? And there's just a lack of awareness. Simply, this is a deep sense of, they just don't have a good idea of what's happening there and what does it look like in the U.S. context. So I think, and also among Indian Americans, directly engaging with them and providing alternative programs. And, I think that we really do have to be very well connected to movements on the ground in India and thinking about creative ways to do that. And, one of the projects I'm involved in is trying to create these messaging networks to reshape discourse and to get different types of messages that counters Hindutva's influence in social media. So I'll leave it on that note and look forward to your questions.
Informations about the current rise of the political situations in India and in relation worldwide and their goal and programs that they are doing it. I believe in the continuation we will hear from Mr. Kannan Srinivas. He is being requested to come to the podium. He is a journalist himself by profession, and it probably be right to say that he is one of those who is working on the history of Hindutva and Hindutva rights and so on. So naturally he will elaborate some of the things in his speech, I expect. So I ask him to come to the podium, please, and thank you very much for this.
I was just thinking that, like all of you, I've been very disturbed about recent events in India, and I've been trying to see some patterns then. And one thing that is very striking above all, and this sounds a bit obvious, is that there is now a general atmosphere of complete impunity, of no accountability for any acts done. Now, this is not something that's just happened overnight. It's been taking place over a long period. If one looks at, say, 3 things which have been happening today, they have an ancestry in events right since independence. One is the pogroms which have taken place most recently in 2002. Another is the lynchings which are taking place all over India. And the third is the assassinations of prominent persons, which is now taking place. Now, all these have been enabled by this culture of impunity, because the most striking thing after the partition riots, which were in that sense two-sided, in the sense that in many parts of India, Hindus killed Muslims, but in other parts of India, Muslims killed Hindus. But with India as an independent country, the first remarkable event was what's called the police action in Hyderabad, when a very large number of people were massacred by a combination of the Indian Army, by local police forces, by local Hindu vigilante groups. And this is something for which there has never been any accountability. Nobody went to jail, nobody was tried, absolutely nothing happened. People were urged to forget it and move on. And so India did after fashion, but when you have a wound like that, it keeps festering. And in a sense, this festered and was reawakened with every subsequent pogrom. The next one, which seems to me very striking, though of course other things have happened, was the 84 anti-Sikh pogrom. And when again matters faded, there was nobody held accountable. And then more recently, one saw the 92, 93, I mean, there's no word, all these are called riots, but they're actually just pogroms in Bombay, where the Shiv Sena and other organizations killed a large number of Muslims. And most recently, the 2002 riots, where Mr. Modi presided over a wave of killing. Now, in common with this culture of impunity, in which any armed forces of the government are either absent or cooperating actively, most often just entirely absent, they look the other way, is what's happened with the assassinations of prominent persons who have been critical of the Hindu right, most recently of Gauri Lankesh, but also of Pansare and Daborkar. And in fact, now they say that these three are connected, but there is no effort made to track down anybody. Now these things, the lynchings, the assassinations, the pogroms, all have some similarities with events in fascist Europe, because in Germany in the 1920s, in a very short period, there were about 350 assassinations. And that completely paralyzed the government, the Weimar government, which was in office at the time. How do we explain these things? How do we explain these events? I think Rajiv has given a very attractive account, a very coherent account of what's at work today. But I'm just looking at history and some academic attempts to understand this. One of them is an Indian scholar called Jairus Banerjee. And Banerjee has looked at three things in particular. He's looked at three thinkers. One is Wilhelm Reich, another is Jean-Paul Sartre, and the third is Rosenberg, an Austrian academic. Now, Reich traced fascism, the roots of fascism, because that's after all what we're really talking about today. We have a fascist government in office, a fascist party in office. I'm not saying the Indian government is fascist, but it's a fascist party in office and which is using office to implement a fascist program. So these three thinkers all addressed the way that fascism builds as a mass movement. And Rosenberg is the person who developed this idea that fascism has always got to be a mass movement. It doesn't succeed because a small elite, a few bankers get together and conspire. It has a mass base. A large number of people are required to do this systematic killing. And there is a large number of people who believe in this mythology, in the programs that, say, the Hindu right has got today, the BJP and RSS and connected organizations. People believe these very devoutly. So, understanding this mass movement, Sartre looked at essentially trying to characterize people as either groups. By groups, he meant people who are highly organized, who initiate action, and who control the action. And serialities, in which people are completely disorganized. They're a mass, but they're acted upon, and that's how they mobilize for the actual killing. The third person he talks about is Wilhelm Reich, who traces the roots back to perverted and complicated sexuality, which results in patriarchal family relations, an authoritarian family. And the people who have lived under an authoritarian regime are the people who are most vulnerable to such manipulation. Another important academic is Philip Simeon, and he has looked at the concept of minorities, because the particular situation today is the most prominent minority in India is that of the Muslims who whose very nationality is called into question. So Simeon traces this back to the Versailles Treaty, which set up a large number of nation-states through Europe. And the broad principle was that nation controlled the nation-state. The minorities lived there in a dependent fashion. And this was accepted as the principle. And the idea of a nation-state was so profound that in the 1940s, when Jinnah and the Muslim League felt unsure of the way things would go, they looked for security in the nation-state. They said, we can't exist as a minority in India, we have to have our own nation-state. That had the further consequence that the Muslims who are left behind then become the minority. And which has consequences which I describe. My own work has been looking at Savarkar, who's the most prominent thinker and personality in the history of the Hindu right, who was in the Andamans. I mean, I shan't go into the long history of why he landed up there, but Savarkar, in his autobiography, his account of life in the Andamans, which is Mazi Janmate, he explains my imprisonment. He explains what he saw as the key event for him, the key event which made him think in terms of Hindus and Muslims. He was working in the oil mill in the jail, and the oil mill was controlled by a small group of Pathans. And Savarkar felt that the Hindus there, himself in particular, were made to suffer if they worked there. So the whole account of this book, which is so widely respected and for many fellow Maharashtrians is seen as a great, noble personal statement, the whole book comes toward this conclusion that while having been oppressed first at this oil mill, he then, by endearing himself to the warders, he finally actually comes to himself be in charge of the oil mill, and he gets a chance thereafter to oppress the Pathans and other Muslims in the jail. Now this is a little ridiculous because this is a life's journey he's talking about. The most important event in their life is some petty oil mill in jail and the harm caused to another group of convicts who are actually, in a sense, equally suffering, even if they were in an exploitative position. So, from this, this is why I call this subaltern fascism, because Savarkar develops the idea that you can actually have a fascist state, a fascist country, Hindu nationalism controlling India, but itself being subordinate to foreign powers and overseas powers. So it's a dependent relationship in which this dependent party is able to do further harm to another minority. So this, I think, is very important in the way that the Hindu right has looked at all these things. What was called here as the Hindu family, which was given a very clear diagram, the relationships between them, the Bajrang Dal, the Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the BJP, the RSS, all of these actually share a certain point of view which actually was developed in the 1920s, and that point of view is that the real independence in India would not be achieved by liberation from the British. That is not freedom. The real independence of India is achieved when India is liberated permanently from the Muslims. That there is an end to any secular India. I know that secular India has been greatly under strain, has been falling apart virtually, but there is still a shred of it which survives. But it's very important and I think this is central, and I think one should have no illusions about this, about any softening or change of heart. The critical thing for the organizations of the Hindu right is actually the end of this relationship between Hindus and Muslims. And Savarkar thought this through in great detail. In 1938, looking at the pogroms, the attacks on Jews, looking at Kristallnacht, he applauded them, and he said, the reason I applaud this is very specific. In Germany, the Germans are the nationality. The Jews are nobody. We should do the same thing in India, when we Hindus are the nationality and the Muslims cease to exist. So it's a completely coherent, cogent point of view. So he raised this question, he said, who is an Indian? Who is a Hindu? And his answer was, those people for whom both the Pitru Bhumi and the Punya Bhumi lie in India, which means both their fatherland. It's very interesting that he doesn't think of a motherland, which Hindus often do. He thinks of a fatherland on the European fascist principle. The fatherland and the Holy Land are the same. That is, they owe no allegiance to Jerusalem, to Makkah, to any place overseas. So by definition, the only Indians are the Hindus. There's nobody else who has any right to exist. I think the logical direction of all this is unavoidable, because I think the choices that this offers the Muslims in India, it's essentially three choices, very simply. One is to convert, and Savarkar talks about this, and he says this would be the happiest outcome. The other thing is to leave India entirely, which most people are too poor to do, are unable to do. The next possibility is subordination, no rights as equal citizens, but further, and here this is important, on probation every day, every hour. So at any time, for any reason, life can be extinguished. And the last is annihilation. And I think that is the inescapable direction of the Hindutva parties. That's the direction that they are eager to embrace. Now, the logistics of it may be impossible. It may not happen because it's not easy to do. Even for Hitler to kill 6 million Jews was a major industrial activity. But it is the direction of thought, it's the desire, it's the program. So in such frightening events, what does one do? I think that for people like ourselves, for concerned citizens, for concerned Muslims, for an organization like this, for an organization like AFMI or Indian American Muslim Council and others, I think it's very important to educate people as to what is really happening in India, to make them aware, to exercise their civic rights here in America, to lobby about these issues. Just the same way that it became a successful organization to deny Mr. Modi his visa. So these things have been done. It's possible to have effect. And in the long term, we must have effect in India. We must be able to organize, we must be able to resist this, because these are really terrible and dangerous times. So I can see that as the only hope, that we are able to successfully bring public awareness and to organize over this issue. Thank you.
And the woman empowerment, she's also has been activist in various other activities politically for the human rights and things like that. I welcome her on this podium to address us and give her thoughts.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammadin abdika rasulika nabiyil ummi. It is such a pleasure for me to be with all of you this afternoon and at this time in history when we must absolutely be dedicated to reawakening our consciousness and the deepest part of our hearts and our minds to what it will take to change the world. We must be dedicated towards an internal revolution that can awaken and change our communities and the world, God willing. It was Kazan Saab who made me aware of the fact that it was BJP's economic policies and the social welfare cuts that had killed hundreds of thousands of Muslims, more than the Gujarat riots, since the administration came to power. And I remember it was Rajiv's talk at the Left Forum that enlightened me about US corporate influence in India's political dynamics today. The US banking sector and US media conglomerates. Thus, the Rupert Murdochs of the world don't flame the fire of Islamophobia only with Fox News in the United States, but with Star Plus in India as well. So what are the issues that Indian Muslims in particular are dealing with every day? Of course, at the forefront are the cow lynchings that are, as Brother Rajiv has said, are jeopardizing the livelihood of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. We also have this Karvapasi program that is forcefully converting people to Hinduism from other religions. Therefore, the freedom of religion is being diminished and decimated in many parts. Jharkhand boasts of many villages that have been forcefully converted to Hinduism, and they are Muslim-free. We have the Love Jihad campaign, where women are being held prisoner for marrying people outside of Hinduism. We have the Supreme Court now that has ruled against a young couple, a young Muslim couple that met in medical school. Sister Hadia was a medical student when she met her husband. And she had converted long before she had married her husband. At 24 years old, her parents took this young couple to the court and they filed a case that Hadia was not in the right state of mind to marry her husband. And the High Court of Kerala agreed that this marriage should be annulled. Then this case went to the Supreme Court of India, and the Supreme Court cited propaganda material found in international media sites as their basis of annulling the marriage of an adult woman and an adult man. This was a Supreme Court decision. And this is where we are. We're talking about so many things, and the state of encounter killings every single day in Western UP. Young Muslim men between the ages of 18 and 35 have had a target on their head. Every single day, there are young Muslim men all throughout India, every state, that are being killed for nothing other than their identity, for being young Muslim men between the ages of 18 and 35, and complete police impunity. This is the state of affairs. It's very dire. And I'm sure many of you heard that Vice President Hamid Ansari's wife's madrasa in Agra had the school's water supply was tainted by poison. This is the water supply of 4,000 children. These are the signs. These are very much pre-genocidal signs. It's an incredibly dangerous situation. When the Vice President Hamid Ansari, upon his exit, makes a statement that I increasingly fear for my safety being a Muslim in this nation, and then he gets mocked by the Prime Minister and many in his party for expressing his honest feelings. The odds are stacked against us, and when we try to push forward for these encounter killings, for these young Muslim men that have been killed in staged killings, when we push for justice on their cases, we see that the high courts of India, throughout India, not only one state over another, consistently these high courts push back the cases of these young Muslim men and deny them access to justice. And I want for all of us to be awakened to the reality that we must absolutely also hold those accountable to us and our communities that claim to represent the welfare of our communities. And we're happy that they're representing our communities. We're happy to see a face that's similar to our own. We're happy to see representation because representation in politics matters, and we should never kid ourselves otherwise. There were 5 young Muslim men that were killed in broad daylight in Hyderabad by the police. And the police has faced complete impunity, and this case is in the High Court of Hyderabad. And this case keeps getting pushed back in the high courts without seeing any justice. When the people of Hyderabad asked their representative, Asaduddin Owaisi, what is happening to the lives of these young Muslim men, he's kept mum. Hasn't said a word. And I see our community's potential, but we also have to work with our community leaders and hold them accountable. That they cannot take our support for granted. We need them, but they need us. And he's an example of someone who actually cares about the community. But it also gives you an idea about the power of the state apparatus. We also need to work at holding those that are members of our community that are on opposing sides of justice in terms of Muslim issues. We need to also work with them to understand why their hearts are not aligned with the oppressed. We need to work with them to understand we cannot afford to alienate one another, but we need to engage in strategic dialogue to understand how we can move forward together. If we can't convey and convince and unite our own communities, we have no hope for anyone else to care. I have said, I've mentioned many of these issues that are very severe that Indian Muslims are facing. And it's not Indian Muslims alone. The rate of farmer suicides, women's rights, the freedom to tell the truth, the freedom of press. At JNU, which is the Berkeley of the United States, the department that deals with sexual harassment was diminished and it no longer exists. The university got rid of the sexual harassment department. So young women that are getting harassed no longer have a place to express to the JNU that they must take their issues seriously. We also saw in Benares what happened with the young women that were protesting in order for their issues to be taken seriously. The situation is egregious. However, we must not lose hope. And I understand that it's very difficult in the time that we're living in to feel hopeful. When our community's image and the way people perceive and understand us is mired in such bigoted generalizations and Islamophobic language, we start as a community to feel a sense of learned hopelessness. We feel as though we have lost all agency to have an impact on our world. But that is not true. And I believe that the only way that we have forward is through radical self-love. And this is a very serious thing. Radical self-love, at a time of institutionalized hatred all over the world, can radically impact and change the world. But radical self-love cannot be the type of self-love that allows for us to have narcissism. Radical self-love that is rooted in the radical self-love obviously gives us strength. And the source of that eternal strength is the One, the Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The eternal source of strength. Our strength is with the One. And what does Allah mean? Allah means the existence. The existence. The force of energy that threads all of us human beings around the world together. And with the existence, Allah, we have strength. And without our Creator, we are powerless. How do we make these changes happen? It's a change of heart. It's an internal revolution that leads to an external revolution, a change of mind. Before we can do anything, we have to have the belief and the self-efficacy to know that we can make change possible. And here we are. How do we make these changes happen? We have to have the right strategy in place. We have to build grassroots alliances with sincerity, and we have to have deep empathy for all of humanity that is also struggling against injustices. When we think about what's happening in the world today, we see that social media has the power to be a great instrument for changing the world. And we look at revolutions around the world that almost led to great change but didn't necessarily come through on the zeal that they had when they began. So what do we look at in recent years about revolutions that almost took off but really didn't? Instead, they faltered miserably. Examining the Arab Spring, we see that social media allowed for agitation without analysis and organizing without a vision. Agitation without analysis and organizing without a vision for incremental change will never allow us to fulfill our visions for the world. The systems that oppress us will not grant us our dignity unless we're involved, yes. So our involvement is key. However, we are wrong to think that if we continue to accept the injustices caused by the system, by engaging with the current system without demanding justice, we're not going to move anywhere. So we can't use old solutions for new problems. And the issue about radical self-love leading to reimagining a new world order is so many of our community and so much of the pathologies and the patterns that we engage in every single day of mind, of community, is that our minds and our souls and the way we interact with one another and the way we look at the world is deeply colonized, still. And that system calls for a theology of liberation to radically change the way we understand our engagement with the world and our understanding of ourselves. We must internally deconstruct those thoughts that allow us, that are continuing in our oppression every single day. And one of the ways we can do that is to really be aware of our thoughts. It's a step in the right process. In these dire times, I look to the life of the beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. I had a student once ask me, I was her professor, but I was also the MSA student advisor. And I remember I would meet with the Muslim Students Association kids later in the week. And she was also in one of my classes, seminars during the weekdays. And during my session with the MSA kids, I quoted to them something from Imam Ghazali. And Imam Ghazali said that ignorance and faith cannot coexist in the heart. Ignorance and faith cannot coexist in the heart. And I remember Alex said to me, she said, "Professor, but why? Why would God be so cruel? How could that be possible?" Because sociologically, hatred is absorbed through the societies that we live in, like toxic fumes. These ideas are slowly introduced into our vocabulary, into our media, into every aspect of our lives, and we start smelling this poison, but then it becomes this poison we crave. And she said, my student said, how could God not understand that we're simple human beings and we absorb these toxic fumes of hatred and that influences how we understand each other? So how can it be that God could say that ignorance and faith cannot coexist? I said it because it took me a while to answer her, of course. I loved her because she always challenged me to grow and to really rethink my understanding. And I said, because God is always challenging us to constantly come back to our humanity, our hearts, to embrace people with love, to embrace people with compassion, and to see all people as equal despite the toxic fumes that we ingest. And as I mentioned before, I always look to the life of the beloved Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam for inspiration, for guidance, and for wisdom about how to navigate the times that I'm living in. The Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's first act of pushing for social justice came at a time in Arabia where it was the norm to bury young girls alive. This was an ancient tradition in Arabia. However, his heart, full of mercy and love for all of humanity, even though it didn't directly impact him at all, he knew that this injustice against these young girls was an injustice to humanity, an injustice to their lives. And I look at our world today, and the injustices within our own hearts, the toxic fumes that we inhale against other communities that are being oppressed, actively oppressed. Communities in the United States, communities in India, we have to actively work through these issues within our hearts and to be in solidarity with those that are the most oppressed. And I always thank God Almighty I have seen this type of work in my parents' lives. They have always been at the forefront of social justice work within the communities that I have grown up in. Can't thank God Almighty enough. So we see the example of the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and we see that we must engage in solidarity work with the most oppressed. One of my role models for more modern history is this singer named Bibi Titi Muhammad. Bibi Titi Muhammad was a revolutionary singer and political activist in Tanzania. She was married at 14 years old to a much older man, and a few years later she got divorced. And Bibi Titi Muhammad was known in Tanzania because of the beautiful praise of the Prophet music she used to sing. And as Tanzania was under colonial rule by the British, she would sing. She didn't know how to read or write, but she sang, and as the history of North Africa and the Middle East is an oral history, she would learn about the life of the Prophet ﷺ, his social justice work, and she would write songs about his work. And then she would go from community to community and sing songs about social justice and liberation and the example of the Prophet ﷺ. She would sing about the lessons she learned. In her gatherings, people from all walks of life would come. And these became the core organizing units for the anti-colonial revolution in Tanzania. Bibi Titi Muhammad was even referred to by the first Prime Minister of Tanzania, Julius Nyerere, as the mother of Tanzania. And this shows us we have constant learning to do of course, but we really need to engage in the grassroots activism. We need to, of course, engage in grassroots activism, but we also need to be engaged with dialogue, consistent dialogue with our politicians and representatives, because only speaking with politicians and representatives without doing the grassroots work will not allow for real change. And that's key, that we understand that we need to engage at both levels. Then I look at extraordinary poet and philosopher, because I don't think the word poet does justice to the life of Stephen Biko. Stephen Biko was killed in a South African prison in 1980. He was 30 years old. And one of his most famous quotes is, the most powerful tool of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. Stephen Biko wrote the poetry and started the dialogue that challenged the narratives of his time about his community. He was reimagining the world where his community, South Africans, were in positions of power. His ability to engage with the world and to engage his community to reimagine a new world led to, in 1994, the apartheid regime era falling apart. It must be imagined vividly and written about and communicated and dreamed. We must create a culture where we are engaging with the arts, we're engaging our young people with the arts and literature, and to reimagine the world with faith, with love, with mercy, in order to have a future that is different from the current one. We do all have the power to change the world, and it starts with our internal revolution, darling. I'll wrap with this. Whether we're reading about the state of affairs of human rights in India, or the genocide in Myanmar, it's very easy to say, where is God in such difficult times? But I urge everyone here to ask, where are the lovers of God in these times? This is our time.
If you Google it, and I did it, and I asked him about it, is it this? And he agreed that what it is. The informations are correct, and most of the informations are very well written. Apparently, he's a man of just pre-independence time when he was born in 1945. He's a physician by profession who worked through the collaboration with IIT Bombay, biomedical engineering as well. But then he has started to become something else as well. He's a writer, he works in communal harmony, he's a public speaker, he's a teacher, researcher, and after all, people like him listening to as well. So I asked him to come to the podium and enlighten us. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, friends. I'm very, very honored to be invited by you, and such a generous appreciation from your side. I'm really touched about that. Now, coming to the topic today, I must say that my previous speakers have very well exhausted the topic in great amount of subtlety, detail. Can I wait? Should I wait for some time?
You can go ahead.
And please quiet, and even the people who are in the area.
I think people need a cup of tea. Listening is more difficult than speaking, I know that.
We can come close to you.
Yeah.
Please, we can come here so that we can hear better instead of sitting in the back. Please coming forward and we have good grasp of understanding and listening. Please listen to Professor. Whoever are sitting in the back, please come forward. And I'm requesting those people who are using the tea not to talk too loud. Thank you. Thank you. Our beloved Mr. Ram Puriani, Dr. Ram Puriani is addressing us. This is very important, very essential that we can listen to him. Please come close to us. And people in the chai booth, please do not talk. Come here and keep quiet. Thank you. Jazakallah.
Yeah. So thank you, friends. Now, of course, as my description shows that I was something else and then I gravitated toward this subject. Honestly, I must say that through my long association and trying to understand the social issues, I came to two important conclusions for myself, just for myself. Number one, that society has a lot of inequalities, injustices, it needs change. And this change can come only through democracy. That's the conviction I came to. Second thing I learned that this change can come only through social movements. Like there are different phases of my own political journey, my wanting to understand why, how can we have a better society and all that. So before December 6, 1992, I was seriously involved with, as a side to my professional activity, I was involved with the workers' unions. That time workers were losing their jobs. That was the main thing I was trying to associate. Now with Babri demolition, I felt a lot of change. And two things came instinctively to me. Number one, that this is not just an attack on Babri Mosque, not just an attack on Muslims. I perceived it as an attack on Indian democracy, number one. Number two, I also felt that this has something to do with India's caste system. That complicated thing, how it came to my mind, I don't know, but later on I got validated that it is precisely to retain the caste and gender hierarchy of the feudal times that this politics in the name of Hindutva is coming. Of course, very complicated, difficult sentence, I'll try to understand it. Anyway, first things first. So immediately when this Babri demolition took place, that time I was working in IIT, and faculty, staff, students, everybody started saying something abusive things about Muslims. Babar ki aulad. Understand? Family, students, faculty, everybody same thing. I suddenly struck me how Babar has ended up here. Babar died long ago. How he is revived with such abusive things and all that. And then, of course, I remembered something from my history, which I think I try to use in a very rational sense. I remembered that Babur was invited to India by none other than Rana Sanga. First thing. Later on that I also came to know that there is a will by Babur. Babur had left a will for his son Humayun, that Babur ki wasiyat, son Humayun, this let's thank Allah for giving us the opportunity to rule on this beautiful country. Let's rule here with justice, but remember that the majority of the people here are Hindus. They worship in temples, they respect cows, so be gentle to their sentiments. This was none other than Babur. And then I saw around everybody saying Babur this, Babur that, so that is something which shook me. And that's what led me to try to understand the history in a proper sense. Now, why history? Why not other things? Because major perceptions which I saw in the society began from history, especially medieval Indian history. There is a lot of material in that which can be seen in a very positive light and which can also be used to demonize others. It can also be used to demonize Hindus if you are in Pakistan. It can be used to demonize Muslims if you are in India. So, a lot of things like that happen. Anyway, so first thing which struck me that I am witnessing a great big violence in Bombay, sitting in the IIT tower or whatever you call it. A massive violence is going on and you can't do a thing about it. So of course usual thing, peace marches, relief work and all that. But what prompted me to see that those people who are getting killed in this violence, they are guilty people or innocent people? This is a question I posed to myself. And then of course later on I extended it to currently when I say I give various examples. One particular, this is, I'm just fast forwarding. One example which I give very commonly is about 2013. 2013, I hope you recall that right in the beginning of the year, there was violence in Lahore. And some localities of Christians were burnt, many Christians were killed. 3 months later, Muzaffarnagar, Uttar Pradesh, India. Many Muslim villages destroyed, many Muslims killed. And not to be left behind, 3-4 months later, there is Bangladesh. Bangladesh also somebody is killed, being killed. Who's that? That is Hindus and Buddhists. So this, when I put the picture together, first thing which strikes me very deeply, very hurtingly, and that it is by and large the innocent people who get killed in the communal violence, number one. Number two, those who get the violence done. Please note, second study, this violence is not accidental, it is not spontaneous, it is a planned violence. It is so well planned that it looks spontaneous, if I am to express myself correctly. And then, how can these guilty people be killed? Very simple, that there is a perception in the community which demonizes them. Like in Pakistan, it is Hindus and Christians who are looked down upon them. In India, Muslims, and don't forget Christians are also joining this thing. And in Bangladesh, Buddhists and Hindus. And these perceptions, I have broadly learned a term called social common sense. Now, social common sense, the way social common sense was prevalent in earlier times about women, about Dalits, that women cannot study, should not study, etc., etc. Current times, the social common sense is focused in India, particularly against Muslims very heavily and partly against Christians. Of course, Christians have also joined the whole this thing from last 10-15 years. They are also a good deal of victim. Now, this social common sense, how does this violence take place is the first thing which we try to understand. Then here, of course, I will recommend you some of the things which you should see sometimes because the problem is getting out of hand and all that. There is a Hindi serial based on Bhishma Sahani's film. What is the 3-part serial? I'm just forgetting the name of those for at the moment. There is Om Puri, there is this thing, and that is based on the partition story. So one of the things which incident is given there, that a Muslim politician, of course politician, the way they dress and all that, comes to a Dalit, Om Puri, and gives him some money, says that you kill this pig and go and put it in a mosque. Now Om Puri, very simple-minded Dalit, he says, yes, you are telling me I'll get the money, but how will you benefit by this? What is your advantage in this? He said, you don't understand, but my calculation is that when you will put the pig in the mosque, I will spread the word that Hindus have killed the pig, communal violence will take place, and my stature in the society will go up. So this point again, I will come back to this, that who benefits from the communal violence, there is a very difficult pattern. So one, innocent people get killed, and the guilty people generally get promoted in the political social hierarchy. And 2 examples I'll give you. One is from our Bombay. You may be knowing one person in Bombay who were experts in beating up others. You don't remember? Our Bal Thackeray?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Anyways, so after 92-93 violence, he started being addressed as Hindu Hriday Samrat. So earlier he was a simpleton like you and me probably, and not like you and me. He became Hindu as a Samrat, and what striking coincidence that after 2002 Gujarat violence, Narendra Modi was also promoted to the same stature. Anyway, later on of course, Narendra Modi made a lot of big strides. Nobody now remembers him as a Hindu Hriday Samrat. He has made different strides today. Anyway, so communal violence is the root of polarization. Polarization is, what is polarization, for example, in today's context? Now, a majority community is made to perceive that this minority is a threat to you. So that's how this polarization works, and that's how, if you can get the Gujarat violence orchestrated, for next 3 elections, your victory is sure. Why people don't see that violence has taken place under your chief ministership? People then say that this is a person who has saved us from the minorities who are so violent. My personal experience after Mumbai violence of 92-93, I was just visiting one shop. There was one police inspector who was friendly to the shopkeeper, and they were talking. And shopkeeper was saying, "Oh, very good. Thanks to Shiv Sena that we Hindus are saved. Otherwise these Muslims would have finished us." So see how the inversion of reality in these cases of violence starts taking place. And before that, how the ground is prepared. Ground is as prepared. Just 2-3 examples I'll give, because a lot of these things I have already put in my videos and that you must have seen. But some of the things are very striking. Like in India, if you go, Muslims first are identified with the Muslim rulers. Many times I say, "Okay, rulers are rulers." For example, if Aurangzeb has done some atrocities, how is today's Muslim responsible for that? You can have, I don't know, imaginatively, if you know about H.G. Wells, that fiction, Time Machine, go back into the past, dig out Aurangzeb, punish him, I have no problems. But why demonize today's Muslims for whatever Aurangzeb did? Then 2 things, of course, that Muslim kings, very bad. They came on the horsebacks with Quran in one hand, sword in the other. Many people let me pass when I say that people say Muslim kings came with Quran in one hand, sword in the other. But sometimes I get caught also. Once in a college where the naughty students, young friends were there. As soon as I said Muslim king came, people say that Muslim kings came on the horseback with sword in one hand, Quran in the other. The students started saying, "Sir, you are wrong." I said, what happened? I said, if there is a Quran in one hand, sword in the other, how can he drive the horse? That's not Anyway, then I came to realize, how did Islam come to India? Did it come through sword? I can there tell one simple thing, that kings expand power, kings expand empires. Spreading religion is not on their menu. And that's where I quote generally one of the greatest historians of India, Robina Thopper, who tells us that none of the kings in the world spread their religion, barring one noble exception, and that is Emperor Ashoka. And what did he spread? Buddhism through particular way. And then, where was the head office of Muslim rule, so-called Muslim rule? It was not in Kerala. Where did the first mosque came up in India? It was in Kerala. So how did this happen? In Kerala, no Muslim rule. For a brief while, Tipu Sultan is there, but by and large, there are other rules. So the first mosque which came was because Arab traders were coming, having local interaction, and that's how the Islam came into India. Then what does Swami Vivekananda say about Islam coming to India? Swami Vivekananda, authentic source. Swamiji tells us, Collected Works, volume 8, page 330. What does he tell us? He says that it is wrong to say that Islam spread on the strength of the sword. The victims of the caste atrocities embraced Islam to escape the caste tyranny. And that's what the major phenomenon. Of course, there are various other things, I am not going to that. Then temple destruction became a very central point, especially after Babri demolition came up. Like they said, "Ye Ram Janmabhoomi," this one. And there, of course, I recommend you that all this temple destruction thing began, this whole propaganda, with this Babri demolition, Ram temple issue. And there is a beautiful film, if you have not seen, you should not miss it, and that is In the Name of God, Ram Ke Naam, by the great legendary, our friend, Anand Patwardhan. Ram Ke Naam, when you see, you realize, Anand Patwardhan had a hard time. He's shooting the film before the demolition. He goes to Ayodhya and he wants to find out what is this business about Ram temple being there precisely at the spot where Babri mosque is located. He goes and he interviews the pujaris. His first dilemma, I forgot to tell, first dilemma was that in Ayodhya there is not one Ram temple, there are nearly 50 Ram temples. No problem, more the merrier. Where the problem come? Anand interviews the pujaris of those temples and he asks them, Pujariji, tell me, what is the reason for fame of your temple? Every pujari gives a single answer. Can you guess the answer? Lord Ram was born precisely in this spot. Now that is very important. Now if Lord Ram can get born at 50 places, I mean that's something very interesting scientifically. Okay, so again temple destruction, lot of reasons, lot of big things we can talk about it. But simple thing is that temples were destroyed for two major things. One, because they were repositories of wealth. And wealth not of ordinary proportions, wealth of mouth-watering proportions. Sometimes these days of course when I am talking to young friends, I tell them that somebody gave a promise that you vote for me, I'll get 15 lakhs in your account and good days will come. I said, okay, whether those good days are going to come or not, I don't know. But I can give you a promise, if you implement that, good days will definitely come. And the promise is that you collect the wealth from 100 richest temples of the country and honestly distribute the amounts amongst all of us equally. Good days will be there for you, all that the problem. So temples had wealth, so kings had eyes on that. Sometimes the temples were also destroyed to humiliate the defeated king. And one best examples of that come from the great articles by one historian in Frontline. And he tells us that whenever two Hindu kings were fighting, victor Hindu king used to destroy defeated Hindu king's Kul Devata, clan god temple, and that's how one of the reasons for that. So these have become such a powerful thing in people's mind that Muslim kings, Islam, temple destruction associated with today's Muslims. And of course to add on that, I will definitely like to add one more thing. After 9/11, another thing also came up. Not many people might have referred to a great big phenomenon which took place and which has passed off also, like that Malegaon, Makkah Masjid, Samjhauta Express. In all those blasts, there was a hand of people who were Sadhvi Pragya Singh Thakur, Asimanand, Lieutenant Prasad Purohit, etc., etc. Now, of course, the government has changed, so many of them are getting bail. That's another point. But this was also a great sequence. So 9/11, 2001. After that, American media coined that word for the first time in the history of the world. What was that coin? What was that phrase? Islamic terrorism. Now in the world we know that terrorism has been there because of there was the Irish Republican Army, Liberation Tiger of Tamil Nadu, the Khalistani terrorism, different type of terrorism were there. But so far, religion was not highlighted. After 9/11, deliberately, religion was highlighted, and that has become a very strong point for demonization of the Muslim community. Anyway, so that all this has added this ongoing violence in India, in which, according to one statistic, 90% of the victims of communal violence, they are the Muslims. Please note statistics. 2011, the percentage of Muslim population is 14.2 in India. And from amongst those who are the victims of communal violence, 90% of them are Muslims. Now, of course, so this is another point which has come into being. Now, Indian Muslim community, slightly before I look into that, I must say there was a very nice presentation about pluralism and all that. How do we popularly perceive? There is syncretism, there is mixed culture, there is a interaction in the culture, and that's where we see. I try to understand it in very simple things. I know one good thing I came to know here, that a lot of friends here are from Hyderabad, and from last 3 months I am also living in Hyderabad, and the pleasures of one eating eatable cuisine, biryani, all over the country, wherever I go, I ask them. And this is one of the best examples of our syncretic culture, food. From where did it come? It comes from Iran. And what do they call there? They call it biryani. Of course, we are specialists in adding spices, making it more tasty, and it becomes biryani. So we cannot forget. Those coming from Hyderabad cannot let us forget that. In our Mumbai, there is a similar thing called vada pav. I don't know whether you have enjoyed that. And vada pav is also very beautiful. You know, the outside of that vada pav is constituted by what we call as pav. It is a sort of a bread, which had come from Afghanistan. That vada is made of gram dal, which came from Mexico, and then there is a potato in that, which came from Spain. And for taste, we are adding ginger, and ginger came from a place from where these days everything is coming original duplicate. In India, it is India, America, China. Okay, so many things are coming, and we have such a sort of a integrative thing in our clothing, food habits. Forget that. Recently, BBC had conducted a survey amongst the non-resident Indians as to what are the bhajans, the devotionals, Hindi devotional songs from Hindi films which you like most. And of course they listed 10 songs. I don't remember all of them. I remember one song which probably people close to my generation will identify, and that is from a film called Baiju Bawra. I don't know how many. Yeah, so Baiju Bawra, who's the writer of the film? The writer of the song? Shakil Badayuni. Who's the singer? Muhammad Rafi. And who composed the music? Naushad Ali. Thank you very much. Now this goes from the past. And there is a recent film which is a big favorite of mine, like Amir Khan is a big favorite of mine for my various understanding. You remember that in Lagan there is a song which villagers sing on the 4th day evening of the test match between Amir Khan's team and Captain Russell's team. O Palan Hare, Nirgun aur Nir. And the writer is our close friend Javed Akhtar. And music is given by none other than Allah Rakha Rahman, one of the greatest music composers of. So this is one aspect of our life, music. But highest thing I can tell you, the biggest synthesis which took place between Hindus and Muslims in particular is around two traditions. One tradition has roots in Hinduism, another tradition has roots in Islam. One is Bhakti tradition, another is Sufi tradition. And there are so beautiful stories about Muslims, Hindus, both following saints like Kabir. Of course, when I talk about saints, I have to become very careful, because I think our friend Rajiv told us about God market, because his saints are dominated by that God market. But my saints are different. My saints are those Kabir, Tukaram, Nassim Mehta and all that. Those people who identified religion as love. Giving love to society, that is what religion is. And the same thing near our Bombay, there is a place called Kalyan. And there is a dargah there called Haji Malan. I don't know if you have seen that. I visited with my family, and I was surprised there that the Hindus also visit. They offer coconuts. Muslims visit, they offer full of each other. And the name of the Mujawar of the dargah, the name is very interesting. It is Pandit Vishnu Ketkar. That ends the matter for me. So this is where the matter of spirituality, devotion. I am not a scholar of religion. That way I am not a scholar of anything. But little things which I understand from life, that people have seen religion as a binding force. So whole of the medieval period, if you see, it was an interaction between Hindus and Muslims in particular, and partly in the Christians. Like Christians also, we see that they are also being demonized a lot. Christians also, you should remember that in India now they are saying that Christian missionaries converting force, fraud, fraudulence and all that. But real story is that Indian Christianity is older than American Christianity. And Indian Christians percentage, like it began from 1852, nearly 1970, 80 years. Now, from that on, today according to 2011 census, the percentage of Christians is 2.3%. So many times I ask them, Christian missionaries coming here, 1900 years, converting. How many people they could convert in 1900 years? 2.3%. So if somehow I become the evaluator of their work, should I make them pass or fail? Obviously at 2.3% nobody can pass unless he is son or a daughter of a minister. So this is how, but people's perception becomes so strong, oh Christian missionaries, oh Muslims, oh this and all that. Now, so this is where This is what was utilized by the British, or actually a lot of it was promoted also by British, and the first thing which they did was to bring in a book called History of India, History of British India by James Mill. And James Mill for the first time tried to periodize the history into Hindu period, Muslim period and the British period. See the cleverness of this. Hindu period followed by Muslim period followed by not by Christian period. That becomes a British period. Okay, anyway, now this Hindu-Muslim thing which we see again, like there are a lot of, currently of course so many things are happening that even the events are being changed. I thought same events can be constructed into one pattern of history or another pattern of history. Now to do away with the problem, the events themselves are being changed. One interesting thing I'll tell you, this is very funny, like Akbar and Rana Pratap, recently a lot of serials have also come there, and in Rana Pratap, normally we know that Rana Pratap was defeated in the battle. So now Rajasthan Education Minister says, how can we say that Rana Pratap got defeated? Let's change the book. Openly the fellow is saying that let's say Rana Pratap won in the battle, Akbar got defeated. Anyway, I said, how does it matter who wins the battle? Because they were both the Hindus were on the both sides, Muslims were on the both sides. Akbar that day did not come to Haldi Ghati. I don't know what was the problem. He took casual leave or he was sick, I don't know. Who came in place of Akbar? It was Raja Man Singh. Raja Man Singh. And Rana Pratap was being assisted by whom? A person called Hakim Khan Sur. Very simple. Hindus are on both sides, Muslims are both sides. Is it a battle for religion or power? It is a power. It is for the king. So those type of things, like in our Maharashtra, you must be knowing that one of our greatest kings people remember is Shivaji. Our railway station, Shivaji. Airport, Shivaji. Big part, Shivaji. Vada Pav, Shiv Vada Pav. Okay, we are enjoying the Shiv Vada Pav. And they say that, oh, Shivaji, anti-Muslim. I try to understand Shivaji Afzal Khan. Shivaji that time was being assisted by a person called Maulana Hyder Ali was his secretary, and one Rustami Jamal actually guided him to take iron claws with him. And Afzal Khan, when he was beaten, he was attacked by Shivaji. Afzal Khan was being supported by a person called Krishnaji Bhaskar Kulkarni. Now what is religion is this? The Hindus both sides, even Muslim kings are employing Hindu, like Aurangzeb, okay. Aurangzeb, the most demonized Muslim king. Please note that Professor Athar Ali's classic book on composition of Mughal dynasty tells us 34% of the courtiers, court officials of Aurangzeb, 34% of the court officials of Aurangzeb, they were Hindus. And the topping the list is Raja Jai Singh. So how this comes to be? British come in, they introduce communal historiography, as I explained in the morning, communal historiography. Here, religion of the king becomes central to the history. And that is used, like particularly I say, British must have felt the need to propagate this history, particularly after 1857. 1857, first war of independence as labeled by Savarkar. Like, I hope you remember, who was a person who lit the spark of 1857? Mangal Pandey. Who came to lead the war? Bahadur Shah Zafar. Who were the associates of Bahadur Shah Zafar? Tatya Sahab, Tope, Nana Sahab, Peshwa, Jhansi ki Rani. Hindu Muslims came together, fought against the British. British crown got shaken, and that's where they brought in the policy of divide and rule more intensely. So Muslim communal historiography started projecting that we were the rulers here, Hindus were cowards, Hindus are nobody. And Hindus started saying that in this Hindu nation, Muslims are the invaders. I'll come to that shortly. So this is where I think the roots of communal historiography, they start the process of demonization. And as somebody correctly pointed out, this communalism is a modern phenomenon. It's a modern phenomenon. It begins in India with the coming of British. Now, second point, we note that why did British come to India? A beautiful book by Shashi Tharoor, something related to empire, it should not be used by the young people. British came here. Now, British came here primarily for trade, They ruled here and they plundered the country left, right and center. Now, of course, today our Prime Minister down everybody says that India has been a slave from last 1400 years, 1600 years. They go on extending. They try to relate it that once Muslim kings start coming, India becomes slave. Now, my question in case, of course, I can't talk to them directly, but through you I can talk. Now, where did the Muslim rulers took away the wealth from this country?
Nowhere.
Kabul, Kandahar, Makkah, Medina, nowhere. They lived here, died here, became a part of this land. And who took away the wealth from this country? It was the British. They never integrated into the local this thing. Their head office remained internal. Now, in order to plunder the country, they brought in 3 changes. Of course, in the popular style I'll tell you, you will remember it all your life. One is, of course, for transport, taking the material from Pune to Bombay. Earlier there was bullock cart. They said bullock cart is very slow. So what did they brought in? Railways. First major change, railways. Now, second was that British Viceroy living in Kolkata, he has to send the letters to all his officers. So how were letters being carried before the British came? Some people say pigeons. Of course, pigeons is a very beautiful answer, but pigeons had a limitation. They used to carry generally love letters. Okay. So they said, okay. They brought in telephone, telegraph, postal system, which we remember as mail. And third is, of course, positive, negative both together. Modern education, modern administration, and one part of that was jail. So just to remember, rail, mail, and jail. Okay. Now with this, 3 new classes come up. Businessman industrialist, Tata, Birla, Bajaj, Singhania. They set up industries. Next class comes up, working class. And with this also comes up modern educated classes. So this side I say rising classes. Businessmen industrialists, workers, educated classes. And the earlier classes, please note here, if we can understand this part, we will understand communalism has nothing to do with religion. Communalism is an attempt to retain pre-modern social values in the modern setup. Please try to understand. So, social changes are coming up, new powerful groups are coming up, old powerful groups, landlords, Rajas, Nawabs, I hope that much Hindi Urdu will do, Rajas, Nawabs, they feel threatened. As they feel threatened, they also form some organizations. So some organizations come from rising classes, and these classes I call as declining classes. Some organizations come from there. Just see the pattern of names of these 2 group of organizations, you will understand how declining classes are using religion as a cover to retain their privileges. Just one sec. And now from rising classes, my 3 major representatives are Sardar Bhagat Singh, Naujawan Bharat Sabha, Bhimrao Babasaheb Ambedkar, Republican Party of India. And in the third category, the biggest party which came up to lead the national movement, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Annie Besant, Sardar Baldev Singh, and Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Bharatiya Rashtriya Congress or Indian National Congress. Now from declining classes what happens? I am not going to spare anybody here. From declining classes, there is a long history. When I say Jinnah, there are 100 interpretations. But I just, for the limited purpose, declining classes comes, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, name of the political party, Muslim League. Savarkar, about whom our friend told us, what is the name of his party which he joined? Hindu Mahasabha. Please note the names. What are the names here? Naujawan Bharat Sabha, Republican Party of India, Bharatiya Rashtriya Congress. What is the pattern here? Muslim League, Hindu Mahasabha. So it is not that these people are doing for religion, they are representing the declining classes and the declining classes values. Here the major values are, what are the major values? I'll come to RSS in a minute. Now here what are the major values? Of course, my friend, young friend Rajiv told us something about Gandhi. That is matter of debate. But Bhagat Singh, Gandhi, Ambedkar, many differences. Lot of differences between Bhagat Singh and Gandhi, lot of differences between Ambedkar and Gandhi, but there are some common factors. Please note the common things. What are the common things? Number 1, they all believe in Indian nationalism, right or wrong? Yes. They all believe in secularism? Yes. They all believe in liberty, equality, fraternity? Yes. My case is over. So these, despite differences, there are some core values in the rising classes. And those values are liberty, equality, fraternity. And please note here, Muslim League Hindu Mahasabha, on the top of it, it may appear कि वो एक दूसरे के खून के प्यासे हैं. Believe me, you वो वास्तव में चोर चोर मौसे मेरे भाई हैं. They have the similar values. And here I must point out any politics in the name of religion. Christian fundamentalism, Islamic fundamentalism, Hindu communalism, their core values are the similar. Their attitude towards women, their attitude towards low caste, low class people is just the same. And that's what I'll try to explain. Like Muslim League Hindu Mahasabha, most interesting point is, initially they were together. Hello, their origin was together. Nawab of Dhaka, Raja of Kashi. They come together and they form a group called United India Patriotic Association. They pledge their loyalty to the British. They say our religion teaches us that we should be loyal to our ruler. Very simple. So Congress and Bhagat Singh and Ambedkar, they are trying to rebel against British. This is against our religion. So please see the mechanism of doing politics under the cover of religion. Basically, what do they want? They want their feudal privileges, feudal social system to continue. What is the feudal social system? Number one, about class structure. What is the class structure? There is a landlord and there is a serf. Zamindar or garib kisan, they cannot sit on the same sofa. Zamindar will sit on the sofa, kisan if at all, he will have to stand or he will have to sit. And what is the relationship between man and woman? Very important. We forget the gender aspect. But I see gender aspect is a central, crucial part to the communal politics. And there, most of the people, it may be Christian fundamentalists, Islamic fundamentalists, or Hindu communalists, they regard women as their property. That's why if a Hindu girl converts into Islam, they feel that we have lost our property. So that's why love jihad is very disturbing. That's why inter-caste, inter-religion marriage is very disturbing. Oh, we are losing control of our women folk. And second point which they say is about the caste structure. In India, caste structure is central to understanding Indian politics. And in the class, for that what Dr. Ambedkar tells us, Indian society is like a 4-storied building. Some people they identify this with a glorious caste structure, but in this building, 4 stories are there, but there is a problem. What is the problem? There is no staircase. If there is no staircase, people from down cannot go up. People from top anyway don't want to come down. They don't want to come down, these people don't go up, so caste structure is good. Anyway, so it was actually, in Indian case, there was another thing. India came to be through the freedom movement. There was nothing like India before the British came here. There was this empire, that empire, and through connections by railways, transport, mail, India as a nation emerges, and who contributes into the formation of the nation? Everybody. Industrialists, workers, women, Adivasis, everybody participates in the India, and that's how the concept of India. Now, so people from this side, rising classes, Bhagat Singh, Ambedkar, Gandhi group, they contributed to the making of modern India. And people from this side, Muslim League, Hindu Mahasabha, RSS I'll bring in shortly, they kept totally aloof from the freedom movement. Why they kept aloof from the freedom movement? Very simple. Freedom movement was for secular democratic India. So is Muslim League out of hand that it will participate in the secular movement? It wants a Muslim nation. And what does Hindu Mahasabha want? Hindu Mahasabha wants Hindu nation. So they are also not out of their mind to participate in that. Anyway, so stop here, and from Hindu Mahasabha Savarkar, he introduces a word, 2 words here I'll elaborate that. One word is Hindutva. Very confusing, very confusing. Today people think that Hinduism is a religion. Hindutva is a religion. 4 words you remain clear, you will never be confused. Hindu, Hinduism, Hindutva, Hindu Rashtra. Now Hindu word actually is not there in the so-called Hindu scriptures. Vedas, till 7th century the word Hindu is not there. How does it come to be? It comes as a geographical category. Like when Bhagat Singh says Hindustan Socialist Republican Association, here the word Hindu is being used as a geographical category. The people coming from the west, they had to cross Sindhu river. In their language, the word Sa is used less often, so they made it Ha. So Sindhu becomes Hindu. So this land becomes Hindu, number one. So as a geographical category, all the people are Hindu, no problem. But geographical category gives place to the religious category. So second word comes in the form of a Hindu religion. No profit for Hindu religion. Why? Because it's a different religion. It's an ensemble, collection of all the religious traditions prevailing in that subcontinent. What are these traditions? Brahmanism, Shamanism are the main part. What is Shamanism? Brahmanism is belief in the hierarchy of caste and gender. And Shaman tradition, Nath, Tantra, Siddha, Shaiv, Siddhant, Bhakti, they are away from Brahminical values. They more or less believe in the equality of caste and gender. But what is the dominant tendency? Dominant tendency is Brahmanism. So that's why Ambedkar says, as Hinduism is prevailing today, Hinduism is a Brahminic theology. So he is actually summarizing, because Brahmanism is a dominant part. So what are the holy books of Hinduism? Vedas, Puran, Upanishad, all those where there is a caste and gender inequality, they are regarded like other literature coming from these different sources of Bhakti, Nath, Tantra, Shaiv, where these things are not there, they are not presented at this thing. So Hindu as a geographical category, Hindu as a religious category, and here Savarkar brings in Hindutva. What is Hindutva? Hindutva is synthesis of three major things. One is the Aryan blood, race, like Hitler concept, German race. Second, one is a race, second is a land spread from Sindhu to the seas, that is the second component, and third is a Brahminical culture, Brahminical values. These are the three foundations of the word Hindutva. Okay. Now, Hindu Rashtra, so means as our friend Kannan explained, so we are Hindus from times, Hindu Rashtra from times immemorial. Just one more point I would like to elaborate in bit detail. So during the freedom movement, three types of concepts came up in nationalism. Number one, first concept is that of India as a nation in the making. So here the concept is what? We are making the nation in the modern times. So Muslim League, what does it say? Well, this ready-made business we don't like. We are already a ready-made nation since the time Muhammad bin Qasim attacked Sindh and occupied Sindh and ruled Sindh. So they are taking identity from a Muslim king. Not to be left behind. Hindu Mahasabha, later on RSS joins. They say, oh, this Muslim League, what is this nation in the making? We don't believe in that. This Muslim League says that they are a nation from last 1100 years, from 7th century. Forget it. We Hindus are a nation from times immemorial. हम अनादिकाल से हिंदू राष्ट्र हैं. Our friends were telling us, we were earlier nomads, right? Was there a concept of nation at that time? Not at all. Then that becomes a pastoral society, like our Aryan society was there. Was there a nation concept of nation? No. Actually, nation and religious institutions, they develop with the settled agriculture. And concept of nation actually takes roots with the industrial society, with all these things coming in, which I tried to present to you. Now anyway, so here comes RSS in 1925. Hindu Mahasabha is already there. But RSS comes in 1925 mainly because of two factors which are disturbing it and one inspiration which it takes. What are the two factors disturbing RSS? Disturbing some of the upper caste, landlords, Brahmins. What is disturbing them? Number one, what is disturbing is them. In 1920, Mahatma Gandhi's non-cooperation movement associates average people into the freedom movement for the first time. For the first time, what we can call ordinary people, they also become a part of the freedom movement. Number two, at that time, with the inspiration of Jyotirao Phule, Ambedkar, the Dalits launched a struggle against landlords and Brahmins. That is called classically as non-Brahmin movement. These two things disturb the elite of the India and they take inspiration from Hitler. the things which my friend explained. So these are the three foundations of RSS, and specificity of RSS is that it decided that we will create Swayam Sevaks and Pracharaks. Now this is how is it different? That they did not directly jump into politics. They went on training programs, which of course nobody else could emulate. Communist parties were having cadre schools, I don't know where are they. But their training programs sustained 1 day, weekly, monthly, 6 monthly, all these programs ultimately leading to Pracharak. Pracharak means propagator. Propagator is the highest category in RSS. Now what are these propagators to do? Now initially RSS propagators means they were supposed to work for RSS. Later on they formed different organizations. Rajiv has given a brilliant presentation on that. So all these are basically manned by Pracharaks. Some of the Pracharaks names I'll also give you, you can guess. Like you know our India's present Prime Minister, Pracharak, okay? Then India had a Prime Minister who also used to write poetry. Pracharak. Then there is a person called Pramod Mutalik who keeps beating up girls who go to cafe and all that. All Pracharak. So Pracharak is a person who for the sake of Hindu Rashtra either will form some organizations or equally dangerously infiltrate the system from within. What is that infiltration? It is education, media, police, bureaucracy, everything like the God is everywhere. Similarly, these Pracharaks can also be found everywhere in India. Okay, now, so this is what is the basic philosophy? Basic philosophy is that Hindu society from times immemorial, very good, no problem. When does the problem begin? Problem begins with the coming of Muslims. Now, because of Muslims coming, they wanted to convert. That created caste system. Caste became unequal. They had eyes on our women. That women's status got degraded. Now this is their claim. But there is a single book which deflates all their claims. And the name of the book is Manusmriti. Muslims like Islam, 7th century, 8th century, Muslim kings coming to India, 7th century and 8th century. So what does Manusmriti say? Whatever RSS believes is there in Manusmriti in a very subtle fashion. Okay, so this overall, but the value of propaganda, the value of creation of self-image is so strong that they believe that ancient India was absolutely a flawless society and the society started degenerating after the Muslims came in. Here I must tell you, some philosopher, some academic has to give us a proper word. I call it externalization of the internal problems. What the basic strength of RSS lies in this construction of Hindu nationalism and construction of a Hindu nation coming from the past. Other things I think my friends have discussed. Now what is the difference? Last couple of points I would like to make. Now as such also RSS has been progressing, developing day in and day out from last 90 years. Since the type of issues, now society has different type of issues. Bread, butter, shelter, employment, survival, dignity, human rights. Other issues are related to identity. Now most of the communal organizations, they are not bothered about survival in this world. They are talking about identity issues. So what are the identity issues which gave prominence to RSS? Initially the concept of Hindu Rashtra. After India became independent, the first campaign was about Indianization of Muslims. Please see the type of hurtful thing they said right in the beginning, that these Muslims are not Indian in that sense, we should Indianize them. Second was cow slaughter, all these issues, but they really got a big lift in the decade of 1980s when Rajiv Gandhi committed two major mistakes, Shah Banu and then opening up Babri Masjid. They fully capitalized on that, and Ram Temple, Lal Krishna Advani, that is what built BJP into what it is today. Now what is the difference? Of course, with Rajiv I may have some other points to add, but basic point I am saying that BJP, RSS cannot be compared to any other party, for God's sake. If there is a God, I will request him that. BJP is the only party whose agenda is determined by RSS. BJP is the only party which has hundreds and thousands of associates scattered everywhere. Congress, very bad, no problem. But please, even then, it cannot be compared to the type of ills BJP can bring in. Simply speaking, because I have been giving a lot of lectures, many times people do ask me finally, oh, you are telling us so much about history, this, that, and other. Tell us, whom should we vote? Whom should we vote? Now that's the dilemma. You say Congress, you get trapped. So much corrupt. There is a family lineage. It is a family-owned party. So I said I will escape all that. So I developed a formula. I said that we don't have a choice between good, better, and the best. We have a choice between bad, worse, worst, and BJP. That's the type of thing I try to give. That's why some things are incomparable. And that in comparison is because of it. Now this debate, a lot of friends have been doing. Hey, around 15 years ago, I wrote an article in EPW that left, for example, our left is generally very confused, shifting from this side to that side, saying that we have a third alternative, fourth alternative. In the process, the left is committing a harakiri, destroying itself to no end. But defeating, of course, this is again negative agenda. Defeating BJP is a negative agenda. There should be some positive agenda. Today in India, secular democratic values cannot be promoted unless there is a unified opposition. That goes without saying. All our experience of last many this thing tells us that the BJP, like Amit Shah, had made a statement, let's unite the Hindus and divide the Muslims. And that's what they generally try to intervene, like even in UP elections. They played a very clever trick, which is very dangerous. They try to present that to Hindus, they try to say that, look, Mayawati is also pro-Muslim, Congress is also pro-Muslim, Mulayam Singh anyway is pro-Muslim, so who's the party, which is a party for you? That was a major plank in Uttar Pradesh. In Assam, they try to create the scare of the poor Bengali Muslims, calling them as infiltrators and trying to polarize. So one point which I tried to note, and here I try to bring in Yale University also. Now, I began with communal violence, and I also said they are not spontaneous. They are organized in such a way that they look spontaneous, and sometimes even minority community people are appearing to be throwing the first stone, but that's all appearance. The real thing was brought out by the very beautiful study from Yale University. Of course, you are in America, so I don't have to, you must be knowing Yale University very well. How did I come to know about Yale University? You know that MHRD minister earlier, Smriti Irani? She said that I have brought a degree from Yale University. Since then I came to know about Yale University. Now, what does Yale University study tell us? It tells us that wherever communal violence is orchestrated, in that region, over a period of time, BJP becomes electorally powerful. Not my study. Here I bring in Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes going to investigate a murder. And people ask him, sir, how do you accurately predict who's the murderer? He says, simple. I go and investigate whosoever is the biggest beneficiary of the murder. That has to be the murderer. And after the communal violence, who is becoming more powerful? Rest of the inferences I'll leave to you. Now, as I pointed out earlier, now what do we do? Ultimate question is that Muslim friends sitting in America, in Indian community, Indian Muslim society, probably one of the worst. Repeatedly I bring such a committee to your notice. It told us that during 60 years, most of the communities have come up in India, barring Muslim community. Muslim ghettos, earlier problem of poverty, intensified by communal violence. So first there is a problem of poverty, inequality, and now comes the problem of insecurity. Police had a regular pattern, wherever there is a communist, there is an act of terror, catch hold of few Muslim boys, put them there, and of course we had been members of the tribunals after the terrorist attacks, where mothers, father, sons of the young people arrested come and none of us could stop from crying. Why? A young man studying in the dental college, studying in the law college is just picked up by the police and his whole career gets ruined. And after 6 months, they get released. So this condition is that of Muslim community. That's where I appreciate your effort to promote education in India, but it has also to be supplemented by the issue of employment. It has also to be supplemented by the issue of security, that is issue of human rights of the Indian Muslims also. Of course, human rights of Muslims and Dalits, they go hand in hand. Look at the issue of beef, cow beef, right? And it's not only that Muslims have been lynched, the next community which suffers is the Dalits. And Una, I'm very glad that now young generation people have come up, like I think Sheila is here, Jignesh Mewani, Kanhaiya Kumar, and all these people, they give us a lot of hope to the declining generation. I talked of rising classes, declining classes, so I'm talking of declining class and the rising class in which we have a lot of hope. And this issue of Dalits, Muslims, women's equality, they are all linked together. And one simple, I feel like taking a test of my friends, don't mind about that. I want to take a grammar test. And that is because of I am very interested about gender issue. What did I say about the full form of RSS? You must be knowing Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Society. It is a masculine gender, feminine gender? Masculine gender, right? He's right? Yes. So can women be the part of that? No. Fortunately not. Yeah. But we have to use them. So how do we use them? There is another organization which is at the peak of this women's RSS subordinate. Its name is Rashtra Sevika Samiti. What is that? Rashtra Sevika Samiti. What is here? Rashtriya Swayam Sevak Rashtra Sevika Samiti. So what is missing? Swayam. What is Swayam? My being. According to every male-dominated patriarchal ideology, the Swayam, being of man, is supposed to be in the pocket of man. Yeah. Research needed. Why men's shirts have pockets? That's the topic of research. Right? So it is not just a question of Muslims to me. To me, it's a question of democratic modern social values. It's a question of defending Indian nationalism. So, Indian Muslims do require dignity, equality, security. What can you do from that apart from education? Please think about that. Of course, evening again I will be talking, and mainly my focus is that how do we build a society? How do we repair this damage, irreparable damage? For 60-70 years, especially, I'll blame the left movement. It has not focused on how do we try to counter such trains which are represented by RSS type organization. And here I have nothing particular about one religion or the other. Please distinguish. Two things must be remembered. One is not criticizing Hinduism. While criticizing RSS, one is criticizing politics in the name of Hindu religion. My major criticism, people who are abusing me, they think I am anti-Hindu. They think so. But I say that there are two Hindus I put in front of me. One is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. I identify with him. One is Nathuram Godse. I distance from him. I criticize Nathuram Godse and RSS and Hindutva politics, and I uphold the values of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, Kabir, and all the same tradition. So friends, we have a lot of job to do. We have a lot of job to do. In America also, while living here, I think there is a need to build bridges with every community. That because major thing, I think if we can succeed in that, how do we counter their propaganda? And that propaganda countering is not so difficult, but let's give it a serious try. So I just feel like giving you some references. There is a app, somebody was talking about the role of Muslim freedom fighters. Very much there. Please download a app, Muslim freedom fighters, which some friends from have. Please download a app, Unite India. Sorry, I hope you will forgive me. Some of the things I will be telling you which I have participated in. Unite India is based on this myths and reality which we have tried to put together. So this can we activate our young friends into social media, where these things are taken to the people? Our friend, great friend, Tisa Setalwad, her website is there, suburbanindia.in, follow it and make others follow it. There are websites like my own one, pluralindia.com. So these things we are trying to update lately. Don't forget to follow The Wire, thewire.in, I think, thewire.in. Brilliant stories, and there are now videos being uploaded twice a day. Videos on the contemporary topics of India are being uploaded. Some good friends are talking on that and doing that. So awareness, very important. How do we do it? Young friends can do it, decide it much better. And along with awareness, inter-community building of the bridges, absolutely important. Through festivals or through whatever programs you think of. And thirdly, of course, Rajiv was correctly saying, issue of social movement. I believe society cannot change without social movements for justice, without just social movements for rights. They have to be promoted, supported, and encouraged wherever possible. This is the only way. And also please note, as that's my basic understanding, that we are not fighting just for the cause of Muslims. We are fighting for the cause of democratic rights of every victim of the society. Thank you very much.
Yeah, so do you have the mic, please?
Brilliant presentation. As usual, I saw most of your videos, but nothing like feeling, touching, listening to you directly. Big difference. Besides blaming BJP, besides blaming Hindutva, besides blaming all those organizations which are fascist-based that we heard, if we take this as a lesson to all the Muslims, that what we have not done. So she gave an example of Ekta Vidyalaya, for instance. They have been planning since 1920s. They had a structure. They had an organization. All the kids that they have educated and brought them up, when the train was about to go on the modern India, after the prosperity of India, Muslims were not found there because we were not educated, we were not trained, we were not ready. The train took off. So as a result, what we are seeing, the Muslim downfall in India, is not only because of what the BJP or the Hindu Mahasabha did, as to what, as a Muslim, what we have not done. I think what is your question? My question is, the way he suggested, we should have our own think tank. We should plan it out very, very long term. It's not going to be solved. I'm sorry, this is not a question, but this was just a comment.
I think, please, if you have questions, then that will be more appropriate. If you have comments, maybe one line, that's different.
Hi, Sivan Bhai Thakur. Thakur sir.
I'm posing a simple question to Rajiv, my friend. Excellent talk. Journalists are considered the conscience of a society. They are the messengers of new developed countries or states or societies. What's being done in India in a journalistic society to keep up to that tradition or come forward in these dark ages to bring light? Great question.
Thank you very much for the question. It's very good question. I actually worked on one of the issues of Himal is about the structure of media changing, the challenges, related to corporatization of media, media becoming big business and how that affects the news. especially for some of the bigger publications. Times of India comes to mind. Times now there's Republic. I think, you know, what we're seeing is, I know that we just had the Wire was mentioned. We've had some very interesting, both English language and regional language publications come up. I think English language is limited. There's some very good progressive publications, interesting publications like Scroll, The Wire, Frontline has been there for a long time, EPW, Alt News. So I mean, I think there are new web platforms emerging, for sure, that I think provide space and give a different role for the media. At the same time, you have some hegemonic forms of media coming in. You know, I think Times Now has been that at certain times, and Republic TV, I think, with Arnab Goswami has come up. So it creates a difficult situation, you know, where you have media as another tool to propagate the messages that are coming out of this government. What can we do? I mean, that was his basic question. What do we do in that sort of media environment where it's so corporatized, there's a lot of money going into determining certain outcomes? I think that it's really developing models of grassroots media platforms. One that comes to mind, the name is escaping, but basically it's a way to have people on the ground, Adivasis, especially in village areas, I think CGNet Swara, where, you know, people can call in their stories and talk about their ground reality. I think we need to have media platforms that actually tap into you know, some of this regional language you know, information that's coming out that doesn't come into English language press. And I think, you know, even one of the projects that we're talking about, how do we support from the US, what kind of things do we try to support in India? I think these are the types of things we should also support. This is not media as such, but it's, I recently attended a talk by the journalist P. Sainath at Ohio State University. He's talking about his new project, the People's Rural Archive of India. And this is just a documenting project of, you know, what are these histories, what are these people's stories? It could be as simple as the songs that people sing, women would sing as they grind, you know, spices and things like that. You know, what are the stories of people, you know, like almost a people's history project like we've had here. I think that's what we really need to bring out. And I think that there are projects like that already happening. That's an entirely volunteer-run project. And I think we can also help in supporting that with money and other ways. So that's my sort of answer.
One of the things that I could add to it is that yes, there is a fake news time and fake media time, but also this is the time when anyone can speak through any social media or other things. And that's a power that is beyond the limitation, we can say that. And public at large can use it so long as the information highway continues.
My question to Professor Punyani. As BJP is the political arm of RSS, we all know that. But all RSS are not in BJP. There are some RSS in other parties too. And lately, the latest election of Ahan Mohan Patel created interesting scenario.
Yeah, actually, that cannot be helped beyond a point. Because BJP is a major political arm of RSS, but there are many other leaders who are very much influenced by Hindu ideology, and they may opportunistically jump into any electoral bandwagon. I many times put it like that in India, Muslim communalism was mainly expressing through Muslim League. Hindu communalism through three fronts: Hindu Mahasabha, RSS, and partly Congress also. Many of those people, so we have to face the reality. And like till Nehru was alive, he was very sure and he had warned the party that many people with communal mindset are entering our party. But because of various weaknesses of which are beyond even Congress control, because I think left had a very important role to play at the social level, which was missing here in our this thing. But of course, whom to blame, I don't know. There are multiple factors. But your point is true. We have to be careful while support looking at the alternatives also. In those alternatives also some problems may be there. But as they say that lesser evil theories are also there. So one cannot help those. This is a political reality we have to live with.
Thank you.
The time is coming to very, unless there are any last persons, one person. Okay, so can you give the mic to, where's this? Oh, you want to ask it? Go ahead.
Well, looks like it's going to be last. So first of all, I would like to very strongly support what Dr. Tajuddin said in the beginning, that really we're learning a lot, but really the Muslims have to evaluate themselves also.
Please question. Yeah.
So this is one of the things that I wanted to bring up, and also we should take from this conference that we form some action group to take action about what he suggested. Secondly, a very brief comment about the organization. I want to commend the organizing committee, but at the same time, I see being in this Chicago area for half a century, I don't see much representation here from Chicago area. And the reason is not criticizing, but as an insider supporting AFMI right from the beginning and the Indian Muslim effort for almost the same half a century, that we need to do a better job in publicizing.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the comments.
Just answer 1 second.
Yeah.
We are working.
Yeah.
No, we are working. We are working.
Okay, go.
Oh yeah, we're working.
You can come here if you want to ask.
No.
Okay.
This was a question for Dr. Punyani. Thank you for your talk. Just wanted your thoughts about this overall thought. Like the extreme religious ideology coming from India, the global perception of India is such that it's almost becoming the most booming capitalistic kind of liberal place in people's perceptions, with more risque Bollywood movies and globalism. You would think liberal secularism would be more prevalent with this kind of media atmosphere. What do you think of this dichotomy and bipolarism in terms of extremism? And do you see any geographical trends based on those things?
Thank you.
Yeah, actually that's a very hopeful thing. Like when globalization began, with all its flaws, some of us felt that this globalization ideas will come and then it will wipe out this Hindutva type ideology. But it happened the other way around. It has actually strengthened, like some of the traits of globalization and Hindutva, they actually support each other. And as Rajiv actually correctly pointed out, like Ambani on one side, Adani on one side, and what is our Prime Minister, Modi in the middle, that actually is a very circuit. So when Modi came to power, I said he came to power on 2 legs. He has 2 legs. One is communalism and other is globalization. So these actually have happened. Even in films were so liberal and progressive. Now even in film world, we are having actors and other things who are promoting right-wing narrowness. So that is actually shock, but that is the effect of globalization from the films.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to wrap that up to the comment, the question that the global perception of India as, with, like you said, the sort of, it's like the whitewashing of India. It's the branding of India as this glamorous Bollywood, fun place, very exotic, and it's been really painted by that eat, pray, love phenomenon. And in doing so, that image that had been building up and very actively curated about India before the Modi administration came to power really has allowed India to escape the criticism in the international community regarding its human rights issues. That very actively curated facade has really allowed them to really protect themselves. But now we're seeing internal documents between government organizations in India that are saying, well, we need to protect our image because the UN has just called out India as being the nation with the largest amount of slaves in the world. And these are the realities of India. So, and a lot of that has to do with India being the last economic frontier of the United States and its relationship to India economically. So thank you.
This will come to the conclusion before it comes to an end. No more question, please. No.
I just announced it.
Before coming to this conclusion, the last point is Brother Ali Bhai Qureshi is coming and he will give his remarks. Thanks. I don't want to introduce him too much except that what is written that he has been a philanthropist and he has been associated with AFMI, has done a tremendous good job. Don't want to increase the time and give the time to him.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. We had the whole session in English, and I would like to do the rest into Hindustani language. आज का जो भी कार्यक्रम था अभी वो समाप्त होने आ रहा है और हम आप जितने भी स्पीकर थे सबके तय गुजर शुक्रिया अदा करते हैं और हम चाहते हैं कि हिंदुस्तान हमारा है, हम हिंदुस्तान के हैं। दिल में कितनी भी बीमारियां हो उसको दुरुस्त करके अपना दिल अपने पास ही रखते हैं। कितना भी आदमी बीमार हो, कितने भी उसके हार्ट के ऑपरेशन हो, लेकिन वो यही चाहता है कि उसका दिल दुरुस्त हो जाए और वो कामयाब रहे। और वही हमारा हिंदुस्तान है, भले उसमें कितनी भी खामियां आप निकालें, हम सभी इंसान हैं, गलती इंसानों से ही होती है और सुधारना भी इंसानी का काम है। आज के स्पीकर्स असलम अब्दुल्ला सोसाइटी के बारे में उन्होंने कहा कि उसको स्ट्रॉन्ग से स्ट्रॉन्ग बनाना बहुत जरूरी है। बलवंत सिंह ने कहा ट्रुथ इज द सेल्फ। डॉक्टर कुतुबुद्दीन ने कहा सोसाइटी के फ्रेगमेंटाइजेशन हो रहे हैं और सोसाइटी तरबितर हो रही है, पर इसको संभालना हमारा ही काम है। अब्दुल्ला गाजी, फिर मिस्टर जेसी वाइट, उसके बाद डॉक्टर अकबर मोहम्मद, फिर डॉक्टर हुसैन नगामिया, सबका अंदाज यही था कि भाई जो भी खामियां हैं ये हमारी करीबी हैं और हम ही को इसको दुरुस्त करना ये हमारा ही काम होगा। राजू कृष्णन, उन्होंने एक टर्निंग पॉइंट ऑफ इंडिया बताया कि इसको हम ये थियोलॉजी को किस तरह से खत्म कर सकते हैं और नई बुनियादें कैसे डाल सकते हैं। सना कुतुबुद्दीन, शी वॉन्ट्स टू अवेकन इंडिया और उसको जागता कैसे करेंगे। राम पुंजवानी साहब, जो हमको चेहरे पे दिखाई देता है, आंखें जो देख रही हैं वो सच नहीं है, इसके पीछे के जो राज हैं वो उन्होंने उसको मतभेद करते हुए हम लोगों के सामने पेश किया। इन सब लोगों का शुक्र करते हुए मैं आप सब लोग से निंदा करूंगा कि आज का कार्यक्रम हम समाप्त करते हैं और जय हिंद, शुक्रिया।